Chapter 254. Chapter 254, Demon Beast Egg. It was a well-known fact that all demon beast eggs came with expiry dates and must hatch within a certain period of time. Otherwise, these eggs wouldn't be able to hatch and stay buried under the ground for a long time, ending up becoming a fossil. Some would rot, whereas some would miraculously survive the lapse of so many years, however, at the cost of consumption of vitality. If these eggs had hatched countless years ago, when they were supposed to hatch naturally, then the newly born demon beasts would probably take birth directly in legendary realm, or in a realm even above that. Moreover, it was said that there should be more than one egg buried under the ground. This spread a wave of joy and excitement among the human experts, and they rushed to capture the remaining eggs. Even one such egg would be a very big harvest. Soon, the second golden egg was discovered by human experts. It belonged to a pterosaur, and the expert who found it was only at truth fourth stage. As soon as he unearthed the egg, it hatched, but things didn't go well for that expert. On the contrary, the baby pterosaur gave him a fatal blow and killed him almost instantly before flying away from there. However, this was not enough to deter the crazy experts from looking for the buried eggs, because they believed that the killed expert was careless and incompetent for the job. They were overconfident that a newly born demon beast should not be that big of a threat to their lives. So, experts from all over the island flocked towards that area where the buried egg had been discovered. The demon beasts that hatched out from these eggs were certainly not like the common demon beasts that were prevalent on this island. They were far stronger than rest of the demon beasts of the demon island. One must know that common species of demon beasts found on this island were far stronger than the species found in outside world. So, it was easy to guess that these eggs belonged to tyrannical demon beasts of ancient era. However, survival through the passage of numerous years caused consumption of a major part of eggs' vitality and essence. No wonder demon beasts that were supposed to be taking birth in legendary realm were now taking birth in truth realm. Not all knew about this fact. Later, another matter shocked everyone. This was also related to demon beasts because on the demon island, even if there were many demon beasts, but there still remained a division of territory among them. They rarely crossed into each other's territories, and since human experts preferred to not barge into the territories of demon beasts, there was rarely a clash between the two races. However, after the hunt for eggs became popular, the human experts couldn't restrain themselves and started intruding into the territory of demon beasts. Originally, there was a presence of formidable demon beasts in depths of the demon island, and one such tyrannical demon beast visited Eagle Union encampment. It was a bird-type demon beast of legendary realm, a senior beast who personally visited Warhawk and his men to take back the golden-winged eagle's chick that was subdued by Warhawk. Reportedly, the chick belonged to an ancient mighty demon god, and demon beasts did not want it to fall into the hands of human beings. The two sides came very close to war, and Warhawk wasn't scared at all, even while facing a legendary-level demon beast. But the fight did not happen because the golden-winged eagle's chick was reluctant to leave Warhawk and actually wanted to become his partner. So, the senior demon beast had to bitterly leave. Before leaving, it bowed submissively, not to show respect to the human experts, but to the small chick who was still in truth realm. This incident was a solid proof that demon beasts weren't dumb creatures without wisdom. It was just an ignorant perception that must be changed, especially because now these human experts were on an island which was home to tyrannical demon beasts. Human experts always underestimated demon beasts and didn't think twice before massacring them for their own benefits. But the wise demon beasts of this island were a different story altogether, pertaining to their high wisdom and tyrannical strength. However, this again made more and more people crazy to find the eggs. After all, who wouldn't want to have an ancient beast as pet? When a newborn beast was already born in the higher stages of truth realm, one could imagine how powerful it would become after reaching adulthood. Some experts were planning to capture one and sell it in the future for huge benefits. Human experts were no fool and reacted quickly. Now they knew from Warhawk's example that newborn beasts could be subdued and thereby turned into loyal pets. Although they could not fight with the demon beasts lurking in the depths of the island, but they could at least capture the eggs. Suddenly, several experts rushed towards the area that was rumored to be hiding eggs. In a cave, a bundle of black light was blooming, and a strange dragon howl burst out in the form of shock waves, but was soon prevented from going outside by a circular membrane made up of energy. What kind of mysterious technique is Yi Shiwen practicing in there? He is creating so much turbulence. From a distant place, Wu Xiaochuan said, while looking at the cave's entrance. There was an incredible look in his eyes. I do not know, Mu Ling replied and waved his sword, releasing an endless stream of light into the sky. Since that battle, Wu Xiaochuan was disinclined to return to the small faction of Qing Su and few other rogue experts. He preferred staying with Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling and formed a small group of 3 people. Not to mention, this trio was strong enough to deal with any possible threat on this island. Now on the entire Demon Island, situation was getting increasingly bizarre, more and more dangerous, so no one dared to stay alone. After practicing for 3 months, 2 days ago, Mu Ling finally stepped into the Truth 9th stage. Although his inner state was not yet stable, but this was enough to put him among the most outstanding human elites on this island. Wu Xiaochuan was also not much behind and reached the peak of Truth 8th stage. He was almost on the verge of stepping into Truth 9th stage. Among all of the summoned geniuses, Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan were clearly the super elites among elites, undoubtedly among the top. Despite being so young, they managed to reach such higher levels. Of course, there were few other experts that were at higher levels than these two when they came to this island, but all those experts were older. Basically, it could be said that these two were bound to become dominating figures in the southeast region sooner or later. In fact, not just Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan, all other experts were going to become tyrannical figures in the future. When considering Yi Shiwen, 3 months ago, he was able to defeat 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak. When these 3 were together in one group, who would dare to provoke them? Yi Shiwen was concentrating on training and cultivating, while the other 2 members of group were keeping watch, even though they knew that no one would dare to provoke them. Wu Xiaochuan was very satisfied, because while staying with 2 cultivation freaks like Mu Ling and Yi Shiwen, he could also concentrate more on cultivating. Not to mention, he felt safe with these 2 trustworthy friends. Mu Ling also did not mind being with Yi Shiwen and Wu Xiaochuan, as long as it didn't hinder his practice. His cultivation relied on Dead Qi and Yellow River, and he had limited time on this island, so he could not afford to waste time. One must know that his progress speed was almost equivalent to that of Yi Shiwen. The 3 experts usually shared their respective experiences with each other and were benefiting greatly. It seems like he will soon have a breakthrough, then his power will shatter the flag array. Mu Ling said. Yi Shiwen always found it very difficult to break through since his foundation was strong, and each breakthrough required huge accumulation of energy. The difficulty level of his breakthrough was much above that of ordinary experts, but once the breakthrough occurred, then his strength would increase dramatically and directly surpass the strength of the experts at much higher level. How is he able to do it? I am quite interested. Let's go and check. Wu Xiaochuan smiled and said, Not interested. Mu Ling answered, Many people want to obtain it, still cannot obtain, you know. Wu Xiaochuan curled up his lips and said, My way is the way of the sword. Everything else is like a distraction for me. Mu Ling indifferently said, Man, you are really a cultivation madman. Wu Xiaochuan said and realized that this was precisely the reason why he was one step behind Mu Ling. He lacked the craziness that Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling displayed when it came to cultivation. But he was not planning to change because his natural disposition included his free, easygoing, and straightforward nature. One of the prohibited taboos in the world of martial arts included abstaining from concealing one's own natural disposition. Cultivation not only targeted at the improvement of body, but also mind and soul. So a cultivator must never try to conceal his true disposition while cultivating. The disposition of the 8th prince was also a kind of nature that helped him a lot in getting stronger. Boom! A loud explosive sound echoed throughout the cave. To be continued, dash. Chapter 255. Chapter 255, Foulmouth Cub Boom. A loud, explosive sound echoed throughout the cave. A blue figure strode out from the cave with a sort of smile on his face. Several deep-water black snakes were flying around him and growling. Although his stature looked exquisite and fairly small in comparison to the monstrous beasts floating around him, but his terrifying, imposing aura was enough to show who was the boss here. Yi Shiwen was holding poisonous dragon water control flag array in his hand. After several months of training day and night, Yi Ziwen was planning to reach Truth 9th stage, and in order to reach this stage, he had collected the corpses and souls of deep-water black snakes for later consumption. Since at the time of breaking to the half-step legendary realm, he would need to have a proper amount of accumulation as well as a difference in the quality of energy. Also, because of this, so far, he was only able to reach Truth 7th stage since he was focusing more on the accumulation of heavy amounts of energy. However, now that he had completely entered Truth 7th stage, one could see that his strength was not at all inferior to any of the experts of Truth 9th stage. This really pumped an invincible confidence inside him. "You had a breakthrough?" Wu Xiaochuan asked. "Yes," Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He had successfully stepped into Truth 7th stage, and for him, its significance was hard to put in words. In short, now he was no longer afraid of anyone from Truth Realm. Unless his opponent was an expert of half-step legendary realm or above, he could easily deal with the rest of the experts on this island. Now, he could also be regarded as strongest in the younger generation of experts. Yi Ziwen's practice time was much shorter when compared with other young geniuses, so this was a huge achievement for him. "Come on, let's go," Yi Shiwen said and grinned at the same time. "Where are we going?" Wu Xiaochuan asked. "We're going to check out that place where demon beast eggs are buried," Yi Shiwen said. "It has been so noisy lately. Let's go and see what's with all this commotion." According to the rumors, these so-called ancient eggs were buried in a stretch of river basin, more like a very spacious plain, surrounded by cliffs from all sides. At this time, the entire area was overrun by experts and all of them were trying to find eggs. Yi Shiwen and his group quickly reached there and began the inspection. Suddenly, a loud voice came from a distant place. "Ah, I did it, I found an egg." Everyone heard the voice and immediately rushed towards him. They were surprised to find a young disciple who was holding a 1-meter-long egg in his hands and was laughing like a crazy guy. Now that he found an egg, this almost instantly increased his importance in the eyes of other experts. Just look at the extent of his happiness. But he has made a mistake of thinking that just because he found an egg, he can subjugate the cub. That's a wishful thinking right there. An expert commented with a disdainful look on his face. "Just wait and witness how he gets killed by the cub. Sure, I expect nonetheless from the cub of a legendary demon beast from ancient era." Yi Shiwen glimpsed at the egg and couldn't conceal the greedy look in his eyes. After all, there was a high probability that this cub contained the noble blood of an ancient god beast, just like Warhawk's new pet. So far, Yi Shiwen had only seen gods' descendants who were basically separated by hundreds of generations from the original gods. But there was a chance that this egg belonged to a real god. One could imagine why this cub was going to be a rare and priceless treasure. The young expert did not waste a single moment and immediately used his hands to inject Jin Yuan into the egg, forcing it to hatch. He was not a fool, knew very well that everyone was eyeing the egg, and if he tried to escape now, then he would surely be tracked by others. So his only option was to forcibly make it hatch on the spot and subjugate the cub. The elite young geniuses that were summoned on this island were no stupid. They were very smart and knew how to act in a given situation. No one interrupted the hatching process and continued to watch from sidelines. It was hard to determine how long it took, but the egg finally began to hatch. Kaka! 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 The eggshell broke off little by little, and finally, a little black beast crawled out of it. Everyone exclaimed at this scene when they saw a meter-long cub with its whole body covered with profane breath. Judging by its appearance, it looked like a wolf, more like a coyote because of its small appearance. Its black body was overflowing with terrifying breath. One could say that a seemingly divine glory was overflowing from its body. The young expert was going to reach out and touch it, but it suddenly opened its eyes. There was an aggressive look in its eyes, and just then, it opened its mouth and shot a beam of energy that blasted the arm of that young expert. A pitiful scream echoed everywhere as the bottom half part of the egg, that was still intact, fell to the ground and disintegrated into several pieces. The coyote stood on the ground, uttered a loud howl, then coldly looked at the human experts, as if issuing a warning to stay away. It just took a few seconds for its quivering limbs to stand firmly on the ground, and the very next instant, it appeared vigorous and healthy as if it was not a newborn at all. Its growth was almost visible to naked eye, just too amazing. It looked like a coyote, but with a fearsome, oppressive aura. The experts began to look for an opportunity to grab it. However, no one knew that its first few words would be, "You fuckers." Then it turned around to run away. Everyone was stunned by this. What the fuck just happened? A newborn cub actually spoke. No, it swore to be specific. In general, a demon beast's wisdom was dependent on its strength and level. But this scene was still hard to digest. It was common knowledge that it was always difficult for demon beasts to acquire wisdom, especially for low-level demon beasts. But the truth was that it was equally difficult even for high-level demon beasts. The only difference was that Sciention-level demon beasts could not attain high wisdom no matter how much they tried, but high-level demon beasts, though after facing a lot of difficulties, could actually achieve great wisdom and intelligence, enough to be able to speak like humans. But irrespective of level or strength, it was never easy for demon beasts to attain enough wisdom to speak like human beings. It was simply unheard of that a newborn cub could actually speak so fluently. It really came as a shock for everyone. Just what was the origin of this coyote? Now everyone had started to feel that it had a tyrannical background. Color of greed began to appear in everybody's eyes. A burly expert suddenly rushed forward shouting, "This cub is mine!" His big hand went forward to grab the coyote. "I am not your sister, fucker." The small cub cursed out loud and spat a divine beam towards that expert. Bang! He screamed while his whole body disintegrated in front of everyone. He died almost instantly, but his death was not enough to stop others from pursuing the cub. The cub saw many people rushing towards it and immediately turned around to flee from there. A stream of divine light appeared beneath his feet and suddenly boosted his speed several times. Ha ha ha, this wolf or dog or whatever it is too much fun. Wu Xiaochuan laughed loudly like a madman. It was fun to see how everyone was trying best to catch this foul-mouthed cub. Even Mu Ling's eyes flashed with a curious look clearly visible in them. After all, the cub really intrigued him. He had never witnessed such a bizarre scene before. There were 200 to 300 experts in the vicinity, and all of them instantly rushed toward the escaping cub. The cub was very tyrannical. It was jumping from left to right to throw off the chasers. No one was able to catch up with its speed. In fact, its agility skill was so advanced that it would make anyone wonder about its background. Soon, it disappeared in a blink of an eye and left only a sense of regret in everyone's heart. But at this time, Yi Shiwen suddenly moved, and in a flash, a beam of light appeared beneath him and blasted him forward like a super jet. Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan also followed after him. Who is this man? He suddenly began to chase, but with his agility skill, it should be impossible to catch the cub. Someone said, "He looks somewhat familiar. Oh wait, I think. This guy is that infamous Yi Shiwen from the rumors." Yes, you are right. I saw how he single-handedly slaughtered those two tyrants. He is undoubtedly that Yi Shiwen, but he has not come out for a long time. I almost forgot his appearance. He hasn't appeared for past few months, but he suddenly shows up today. Did he actually come here for the egg? There's nothing to be surprised about. After all, who isn't interested in these demon beast eggs? He would not even bother to chase if he was not interested. Well, considering his strength, he should be able to deal with that cub, but he lacks enough speed to catch up with it. The cub is too fast for any of us. Yi Shiwen and the other two suddenly vanished from there, and this caught the crowd's attention. At this time, a pair of wings appeared behind Yi Shiwen. These were devil wings, but were thoroughly covered with golden light. The wings were certainly generated from a devil power technique, but since they were wrapped in a layer of golden divinities, Yi Shiwen wasn't worried about exposing them in front of everyone. To be continued, Dash. Chapter 256. Chapter 256. Great changes on the demon island. The devil wings no longer gave off the feel of being made up of dense machi, though its mighty magical powers were still intact, but the ominous devil magic had been replaced by a divine feel. NT. Machi equals devil chi. The people of Zhenwu Jie might not care about the evil ways of martial arts, but they were very much concerned about devil ways of martial arts. NT. Evil way and devil way are two different forms of martial arts. After all, devil race was by far the strongest archenemy of humanity. When Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings, his speed suddenly rose dramatically. He tore a golden streamer in the sky and instantly went towards that small wolf. The wolf cub initially thought that it had gotten rid of the human experts, but did not expect to see a golden figure suddenly catching up. It suddenly cursed out loud. Fuck, this is unreasonable. Although it had a small body, it was very fast and was also using an extraordinary agility skill. It was so fast that even Yi Shiwen, with his strength equivalent to an expert of Truth 9th stage, might not be able to catch up. No wonder he had to resort to using devil wings. In fact, even an expert of legendary realm might not be able to catch it. The extent of this cub's speed could be imagined. However, an expert of the legendary realm would not need to chase in the first place, since with just a flick of hand, they would directly confine the space, making it impossible to make an escape. But Yi Zaiwen's devil wings technique was not an ordinary devil technique. It was a top-tier technique, and since he had already perfected it, he was able to display extremely high acceleration and reach unimaginable speeds in a matter of seconds. Therefore, within a moment, Yi Shiwen caught up with it and stretched out his hands that suddenly transformed into a big hand, made up of Jin Yuan, and proceeded to grab it. It turned back and spat a divine beam towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's big hand was unaffected and directly caught the beam and crushed it. The coyote was very strong, but its strength was only comparable to that of an expert of Truth 8th stage. However, its attacks were simply useless on Yi Shiwen, who possessed a tyrannical golden body. You fucker, the coyote said angrily and turned around to escape, but it was just a wishful thinking on its part, because Yi Zaiwen's big hand instantly printed a direct slap on this foul-mouthed cub's face, sending it flying for a large distance. Yi Zaiwen's wings fluttered, and he slowly descended to the side of the cub that was lying on the ground. You insolent bastard! It was angry because this was the first time it was slapped by a human being after taking birth. It could not accept the fact that it had been defeated by a human, not just in speed but also strength. Yi Shiwen grinned while thinking that it was really very intriguing. He asked, "Well, what is your family background?" The cub pretended as if it didn't hear anything and simply ignored Yi Shiwen. You should consider answering, because if you don't, I would prefer cooking a pot of dog soup using you as the ingredient. So delicious. Yi Shiwen said with an evil smile. Go fuck yourself. This prince is a wolf. A wolf. Get it? I'm not a dog. The cub instantly said in an angry tone. Whatever. Yi Shiwen said dismissively. Why are there so many eggs belonging to ridiculously powerful beasts buried in this area? If you answer honestly, I'll let you go. Yi Shiwen was not particularly interested in subduing an extraordinary beast cub, especially this one. He could see that this wolf cub's wisdom was way too high for an ordinary demon beast. Yi Shiwen was impressed by its intelligence, strength, and skills. There was a high possibility that subjugation might not work on it, because its wisdom was similar to that of human beings, not to mention it had a rebellious personality. Yi Shiwen could not say for sure that he could subjugate it, and if he could not make it willingly surrender and ended up hurting it in the process, then it might summon danger for him. Since he was not aware of this cub's background, which was bound to be extraordinary. Moreover, Yi Shiwen believed that there should be more eggs buried in this area, and he would get plenty of opportunities later on. Yi Shiwen mainly wanted to know why there were such extraordinary demon beast eggs in this area. Also, just like Warhawk attracted the attention of a legendary level demon beast senior, he also needed to be careful not to offend any high-level demon beast for his own good. But one thing was certain, that there was a hidden secret behind all this. I do not know. The cub mumbled while still lying on the ground, as if feigning death. At this time, Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan also arrived and saw the small wolf playing possum on the ground. They were a bit surprised, did not know what exactly happened here. Yi Shiwen explained things to them, and they felt like having a headache all of a sudden. Of course, they could not hurt this cub otherwise that might attract the attention of a legendary level demon beast. Yi Shiwen vaguely guessed that this cub's background should be extraordinary. If something happened to it, then he would definitely be chased down on this island for the remaining months. Usually, as soon as the eggs hatched, those demon beast seniors would immediately appear to protect the newborn baby beast, without giving any chance to human experts to hurt or capture the baby beast. This meant that this cub was also one of those so-called untouchable and precious babies. However, it was not saying anything, rather, there was a treacherous and slick look on its face, as if it would rather die than surrender. Yi Shiwen was a bit surprised by this and secretly praised it. Yi Shiwen did not have a way to find out about the secret from the wolf cub, though it clearly knew something and was not willing to tell. Since he could not resort to brutal means to force the information out of its mouth, as its rebellious personality was a big hurdle. So he decided to keep this wolf cub at his side. Perhaps, later on, it would willingly tell things about this mysterious island. This wolf cub was the only way to find out the real secrets about this strange island. As far as the wolf cub's attitude was concerned, it had non-violent, non-cooperation attitude, and its only option was to stay with Yi Shiwen. The race to capture eggs was getting intense and complicated. A lot of people had started going crazy to obtain an egg of their own. After the wolf cub, several demon beast eggs were dug out, but nothing good came out of it. Most of the cubs fled, and almost every time, demon beast seniors rushed to protect their own, and this led to a lot of chaos. In the end, for human experts, their hard work was all in vain. Certainly, there were some experts who were successful, such as Ji Moon obtained a Hutisaurus, butterfly lizard, which was an extremely rare demon beast. Its whole body was of a Tyrannosaurus, but with a pair of butterfly wings on its back. However, the third super expert, Wang Purple, was the most unfortunate one, because when he finally got a cub, it attracted a demon beast senior, and he was half beaten to death, not to mention that cub was also taken away from him. The good thing was that the opposite party was not serious, otherwise, he would have already been killed. The unrest continued to get stronger and stronger. The silence of the night spread a chill everywhere, while the constant shrieks could be heard transmitting from the ominous mountain. The roars of several demon beasts also disappeared under the overwhelming presence of those shrieks. Not far away, the Yellow River was flowing down the forest, and numerous ghost soldiers could be seen marching upon it. They had been following this daily routine for thousands of years, going on an expedition against an unknown enemy. Mu Ling was indulged in a continuous battle in the Yellow River and basically cultivating. He was fortunate to be able to practice in this river of the dead, which was also the main reason why his cultivation progress rate was so high. Several days have passed. Why haven't your relatives come to pick you up? A large bonfire was burning high and mighty, and a considerably large demon beast was supported on 2 thick branches and was being roasted in the fire. As the roasting continued, its meat was gradually turning yellow while the fat oil was dripping down into the fire, contributing to its intensity. Not far away, the wolf cub was constantly pacing back and forth. When compared to a few days ago, its size was now significantly larger, and it also looked a lot stronger. Obviously, it was still constantly complaining. This prince is not going to eat this lowly demon beast. Nonetheless, its eyes were constantly staring at the almost cooked demon beast. It was reluctant to remove his gaze from the delicious food. Yi Shiwen slowly rotated the branch to roast the uncooked portions of flesh, and the delicious fragrance suddenly spread in the air. Yi Ziwen had been relaxing for the last few days. A short break was necessary to stabilize his inner state. Anyway, there was no point in being impatient when it came to cultivation. Yi Shiwen felt odd, because when other demon babies came out soon, demon beast seniors rushed to take them away. But this wolf cub had been out for quite some time, and no one came to pick it up. Though he did not know what means they used to find out about the birth of these cubs, but in this case, Yi Shiwen felt something was off. "They are all dead." The wolf cub did not turn his head and said in a low voice. Its eyes were still staring at the demon beast meat. From the beginning, he tried several times to escape, but each time, he was caught by Yi Shiwen within seconds. Now, he was a Norfan who did not know where to go. Though it did not take him too long to understand that Yi Shiwen was not going to hurt him. According to what he said, Yi Shiwen also came to know that he was homeless. No one came to pick him up. However, when Yi Shiwen asked him about other things, he refused to talk about anything. Just when Yi Shiwen seemed all prepared to taste the meat, suddenly, horrible shrieks began to echo everywhere. The ominous chi swept from the mountain and instantly obscured the entire sky in the form of dense black clouds. The condensed black clouds suddenly gave rise to endless rain on the island. The sudden invasion of Inchi and Deadki sucked away lives out of the trees, leaving them in a withered state. The barbecue was instantly corroded by the torrential downpour and ruined the bonfire. Then, Yi Shiwen and the others suddenly heard extremely loud roars of demon beasts coming from the depths of the island. They had never heard such horrifying roars before, and it was not hard to tell that these roars belonged to extremely tyrannical demon beasts. To be continued, dash. Chapter 257. Chapter 257. Tomb Slave reappears. What the fuck, my meat? It's all ruined now. The wolf cub could not bear to see the delicious meat corroding in front of his eyes, and his anger suddenly soared to the sky. The so-called proud prince could not control this outburst. Yi Shiwen immediately stood up and looked at the sky. Wu Xiaochuan and Mu Ling also looked at the sky and did not know what actually happened all of a sudden. Beep! A tyrannical golden bird flew across the sky and was headed towards the huge, ominous mountain. Yi Shiwen noticed that this golden bird was actually the golden-winged bird that had destroyed his boat when he was entering the island. Then a giant flaming bird flew from another direction and went towards the ominous mountain. Seems like a major event, Wu Xiaochuan murmured. It was easy to tell from the present environment on the island that something was off, and this was certainly an important matter. And it was kind of scary to see that this matter was somehow related to the ominous mountain. The rain got harder and harder, and black clouds enveloped the entire island. It seemed as if the entire island had been swallowed by a deathly atmosphere, making it seem like the world of death itself. Yi Shiwen and Wu Xiaochuan immediately used Jin Yuan to resist the corrosive rain. Whereas Mu Ling was not all affected by the rain. On the contrary, the rain was actually absorbed by his body. Then, abruptly, a figure appeared in the distance. Yi Shiwen saw a somewhat emaciated old man flying in the rain, directly across the sky. He seemed very far away, but the very next instant, he appeared in front of them. It was actually the tomb slave. Yi Ziwen's pupil shrank because he clearly remembered what tomb slave told him about making a vow to always guard the tombs and not being able to leave the premises of graveyard. But now he seemed to have come out, and this certainly showed that something big happened on this island, which compelled him to come out of the graveyard. And this was certainly related to the sudden outbreak on the ominous mountain. Greetings to Honorable Senior. Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling quickly saluted to show respect to the old man. Wu Xiaochuan did not know who he was, but since Yi Shiwen was showing respect to this old man, then he was bound to be a great persona. So, Wu Xiaochuan quickly followed the other two and gave his salute. What have you decided about the thing I told you earlier? Are you ready to take up the task? The tomb slave said. It is solely in your control whether you want to do it or not. But remember, if you are unable to accomplish this task, then forget about leaving this island. You might actually lose your lives. Yi Ziwen's complexion suddenly changed, so this matter was really very serious. Moreover, they might not be able to leave this island. For these geniuses, staying on this island was only a part of an adventure. No one wanted to spend their entire lives on this deadly island. Their motive was to get stronger on this island, then go back and display their newly obtained strength to the entire world, not to mention also to contribute to their respective sex strength. However, this matter had turned into a serious possibility that everyone would end up dying on this island. Senior, what exactly has happened? At least let us know, Yi Shiwen said. At least he would like to know what had really happened, then he would further decide whether to go or not. What we are witnessing is the period of time that comes once in a millennium. During this period, those undead that reside on Ominous Mountain experience great suppression and are at their weakest level. The old man explained, in fact, the undead are confined in a powerful matrix method on the Ominous Mountain, and it's impossible for them to come down, but the situation has gotten worse because a gap has appeared in the matrix method, and those undead will most likely come out through the gap. So I sent the demon beasts of this island to rush to the Ominous Mountain and make sure to block the gap. Otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. Even if the undead face a major reduction in their strengths during this period of time, they are still very scary, and if even one of them managed to come out, then forget the demon island. The entire world would face a serious danger. Now, they finally understood the seriousness of this situation. Especially, Yi Shiwen understood better because he could tell that this would perhaps affect the entire world. These so-called undead monsters were insanely formidable and scary. Even after facing the suppression that appeared once in a millennium, they were still so terrifying that even one was enough to threaten the world's security. However, this matrix method was so powerful that it was able to confine these undead monsters for tens of thousands of years. According to what Yemo said, the person, who must have set up this matrix thousands of years ago, was truly a terrifying being, simply beyond the comprehension of this realm. However, a gap appeared in such a powerful matrix method, though only a small gap, but enough to put the entire world in danger. The creator of this matrix method must be an extremely formidable being. Or perhaps it was not created by a person, but an organization. Yi Shiwen had already started to notice that there was basically no subordination system among the demon beasts on this island. It was as if demon beasts had divided their respective territories on the island, and no one interfered with each other. Of course, there was no sign of intrusion as well, which indicated a very smooth regulation and territorial understanding among the beasts. The demon beasts only hunted in their respective territories, and there were no signs of cross-border attacks. However, the appearance of ancient eggs was enough to hint that this demon island was hiding a secret, but this time, things got even weirder than before. The wise and exotic demon beasts of legendary level or above were actually following the orders of the tomb slave. It seemed like this island previously belonged to a tyrannical faction, and although there was a decline in its influence over time, the chief of each demon beast clan was possibly still a member of that ancient faction, and the old man was their boss. And even if this faction's influence had declined, we're still a tyrannical existence for Zhen Wujie. It was like a clash between two disastrous forces. Why did the demon island appear once in every 50 years? What was the reason behind summoning young heroes to this island? What was the point of ghost soldiers going on an expedition every night in the Yellow River and against whom? Who was this old man? Were the demon beasts on this island really the descendants of God? Yi Shiwen was immersed in deep thoughts as these questions quickly flashed in his mind. Looking at the gravity of this situation, what can we do? Yi Shiwen asked. You can uncover that seal, since those undead are now under the restraint, and you can take advantage of this opportunity to travel to the Ominous Mountain. But you will get only one chance. If you fail, that will be your end. The tomb slave said in a serious tone. But my offer is still valid. As long as you can uncover that seal, I will give you the right to my inheritance. You think about it while I will go inform the other human experts about the situation. Then the old man turned around and disappeared into the thin air. The insane level of his agility skill could literally shock the world. Just before leaving, he glanced at the wolf cub, then left from there. The other two looked at Yi Shiwen and asked, "What should we do now?" "I advise you to do what the old man said, because this is big trouble." The wolf cub suddenly spoke. Even if a part of the Zhou star array is broken, it is enough to become a door to unleash deadly creatures that have waited for so long to wreak havoc on this world. We have to do it, guys. There is no other way out. If what the senior said is true, then we will most likely die if we don't do something. Wu Xiaochuan clenched his fist and said, "If we don't act, we die." But if we take the risk and survive, we may get that inheritance he talked about. Yi Shiwen said, as even he could clearly see the hidden meaning in the old man's words that they had no choice but to take up this task. Earlier, the old man had said that if Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling refused to take up the task, he would wait for another 50 years to pass on the task to another generation of geniuses. But now he seemed anxious, and it seemed like he really wanted them to take up this task and succeed. Yi Shiwen was no longer thinking about the inheritance, because survival was a much bigger issue now. Come on then, there's no point in further discussion, let's go, Mu Ling said in a straightforward manner. The trio made the final decision and rushed in the direction of the huge, ominous mountain of the undead. They were planning to do all they could in their power before the disaster would strike. But all of a sudden, Yi Shiwen was actually surprised when he saw the wolf cub following after them. The same wolf cub who tried several times to escape was now silently following them on his own accord. To be continued. Chapter 258. Regular chapter. I'm going to increase the pace of releases. Demon Island arc is nearing its end. Chapter 258 rushes all the way. 3 men and a wolf rushed all the way at an extremely fast speed and soon reached the huge, ominous mountain. Although this mountain was visible from any part of the Demon Island, it was in fact located very far away in the depths of the island. Now, after arrived so close to the mountain, all they saw was a steady stream of demon beasts rushing to the mountain one after another. Even the Yellow River changed its course and was flowing towards the ominous mountain. The ghost soldiers were riding the mighty streams of Yellow River and all set to go on an expedition to the ominous mountain. This was really a frightening event. Innumerable tribal groups that consisted of various species of demon beasts, which usually preferred to stay in hiding, also showed up to be a part of this grand expedition. Not to mention, the mighty cavalry of ghost soldiers was also a part of this grand expedition, making the whole situation quite scary for human experts. Yi Shiwen was literally speechless when he looked at the raid being performed by demon beasts and ghost soldiers. Such an enormous and mighty army was enough to bring chaos throughout Jinwujie. The sheer number of legendary realm warriors in this army was beyond imagination. Not to mention, this was just their strength after the decline of their influence over a span of thousands of years. Yi Shiwen simply could not imagine the extent of their original might when this influence was at its peak. The fearful shrieks of the undead creatures could be heard from far. Yi Shiwen condensed Jin Yuan in his eyes, and it seemed as if he suddenly opened a Devu eye in the sky. Now he could see from unimaginable far distances. From afar, he saw an endless army of skeleton monsters that were entirely enveloped in inexhaustible amounts of dead ki. There could be only one way to define these skeletons: terrifying creatures. It was easy to make a guess that they belonged to a mighty ancient influence. And at this time, an army of skeletons was rushing down the mountain. The terror-inducing sound of bones, rubbing against each other, was resounding throughout the sky and making the whole atmosphere even more frightening. Yi Shiwen witnessed how the army of skeletons severely clashed with the army of demon beast and vicious creatures on both sides began the most terror-inspiring battle. In moments, there were several casualties on both sides, but that didn't affect the battle at all. Beep! At this time, the golden-winged eagle arrived like a fighter jet, flapping its wings violently, and shot several rounds of lasing beams on the skeleton army, sweeping clean a big stretch of area. However, the golden-winged eagle did not stop and continued to advance in the direction of the mountain of undead. On the rear side of skeleton army, there was an immense army of skeletons and zombies. And several zombie experts had unimaginable strength and cultivation levels. The zombie commander suddenly released his invincible, imposing aura, thereby sweeping dead ki into the sky in the form of a column of light. As soon as this column of ominous light soared into the sky, it exploded and scattered the dark clouds in all directions. Yi Zaiwen's eyes opened wide as he saw this scene. He suddenly held his breath and simply couldn't believe his eyes. If skeletons were terrifying, then zombie experts were much more dreadful. And then there were also evil spirits waiting to wreak havoc on this world. Wu Xiaochuan cursed out loud and said, "God damn it. I just hope that the Matrix method is still confining a major part of this undead army. Otherwise, we are screwed." The roars of demon beasts, the roars of undead creatures, the rubbing sounds of bones. When interwoven together, the generated noise was extremely horrifying, enough to shake heaven and earth. The count of demon beasts kept on increasing since more and more demon beasts kept on joining the battle to stop the rampage of Thundead army. The two sides were in a deadly deadlock, which was essential to stop the undead army from destroying the entire island. It was like Armageddon. The whole island was trembling. It seemed as if the whole world would collapse as a result of this battle. Soon, the Yellow River also reached its destination, and ghost soldiers joined the battle. The ghost cavalry reached directly from the oblique side and cut off the contact between skeletons and zombies. Although skeletons and zombies might have been extraordinary powerhouses when they were alive, but when confronted with the Yellow River, they immediately fell under the possession of evil spirits lurking in the yellow water, and this greatly lowered their spiritual strength. Some could no longer maintain their existence, screamed loudly, and melted on the spot. It was a terrible war, enough to inspire terror in anyone. The dark sky was wreaking havoc on the island in the form of deadly rain that was capable of instantly corroding things. "Let's go, no matter what. We must cross the battlefield." Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and said. There was only one option at hand for not only their own survival, but also for the safety of the entire world. Anyway, Tomb Slave told earlier that they could not leave this island, and if this undead army was allowed to go outside, then there was no point in leaving either, because the entire Jinwu Jie would face destruction. The entire humanity might face annihilation, so they must find a way out of this mess. Hoo-hoo! Yi Zaiwen's extremely fast flight as he cut through the air produced a whistling sound that seemed to resemble a devil's cry. Yi Shiwen and the others rushed all the way and soon reached the intersection point between the two armies. The demon beast soldiers seemed to understand that Yi Shiwen and the others were here to help them. Not to mention, they were indulged in this battle and simply did not have time to attend to Yi Zaiwen's team. However, skeletons noticed them, and immediately, a formidable skeleton gave the order to his subordinates to attack. They immediately reacted by shooting a barrage of bone arrows towards Yi Shiwen and his team. Also, there was no lack of legendary realm skeletons among the attackers. "Get out of the way!" Yi Shiwen bellowed, and his whole body was instantly covered by a golden cloak of divinities. The mighty divinities were burning wantonly around his body, while also purifying the dead key in his surroundings. This decreased the intensity of howling of innumerable souls that were filled with resentment. The long blade danced in his hands and released a dazzling blade light that instantly formed a curtain of blade shadows and blocked the incoming bone arrows, chopping and crushing several of them to bits almost instantly. Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan also resorted to their secret techniques to block the incoming barrage of bone arrows. Then there came a shrill cry, and a formidable-looking skeleton took out a bone arrow, aimed at Yi Shiwen, and shot. The arrow pierced through the space and almost instantly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. Almost at that moment, a terrible light flashed in the sky, and the bone arrow instantly disintegrated under its enormous might. Then the golden light further proceeded and crashed into that skeleton, crushing him instantly. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw the giant stature of golden-winged eagle in the distance. It did not stop and once again continued to slaughter undead soldiers. Apparently, it did this to protect Yi Shiwen and his friends. The trio and the wolf cub continued to move forward, but more cautiously. This time, they were fortunate enough to receive help from the golden-winged eagle. Otherwise, things could have become messy. They went forward all the way, only to find many experts in the distance. They had also taken advantage of the commotion and arrived here to participate in this battle. It seemed like they had also been persuaded by the Tomb Slave. In short, they knew that if they did not go all out now, then there was a possibility of a great disaster that would eventually bring death to all. Therefore, they chose to struggle for survival rather than waiting for death. Yi Shiwen's team also joined the team of experts. This team was being led by Emperor Chun. Only this time, he was sitting upon a golden lion. He appeared majestic, just like the true emperor of this world. Emperor Chen's imposing aura swept over in all directions. He turned his head and saw Yi Shiwen flying towards his team. He snorted but did not take the opportunity to attack Yi Shiwen, because he was clearly aware of the severity of the situation. He ignored the presence of Yi Shiwen and urged the golden lion, thereby flying all the way forward. Qing Su could also be seen following Emperor Chen, and his aura was no worse than Emperor Chen's. With just a flick of his hand, a blue beam appeared out of nowhere and swept skeletons out of his path. Qing Su was riding a beautiful yellow crane and appeared just like an immortal being. There were several familiar faces on this team, such as Ji Moon could be seen standing on her butterfly lizard, Warhawk was also riding his golden-winged eagle, and Wang Purple was also present. These four formidable experts were guarding the four sides of the team formation with all other human experts inside the formation. Mu Yuran and Jin Wuchen were no longer injured and had come to participate as well. In addition, several other strong experts of the 10 countries of the Southeast region had also arrived, with some being at Truth 7th or 8th stage while some being only at Truth 4th or 5th stage. The island's best human experts had already arrived to participate in this battle for their survival. But at this time, the smell of blood spread all over. The sky turned red and began to pour blood everywhere, almost as if the heaven was crying tears of blood. It's the infamous blood rain, so terrible, an expert said when he was drenched in the blood rain and felt his body getting heavy, to the extent that he was unable to take even a single step forward. Tianyuan Mirror. Yi Shiwen shouted, and Tianyuan Mirror flew out into the sky and released a curtain of scarlet light that immediately acted as a shelter against the blood rain. However, when the blood rain fell on the scarlet shelter, it instead became a source of nourishment for the mirror. Ha ha ha! Yimo gave out a carefree laughter, because this blood rain was simply like a nourishing shower for him and Tianyuan Mirror. This shower of blood was made up of evaporated blood and essence of demon bee soldiers, as they were being slaughtered by undead soldiers. For most people, this blood rain was like a curse and very hard to deal with. In fact, it could even kill formidable experts if proper protection was not used, but Tianyuan Mirror directly erased the curse and absorbed blood and essence out of it. This was the reason why Tianyuan Mirror was getting brighter, as it was constantly absorbing blood and essence of killed demon beasts. The scarlet light released by the mirror almost camouflaged the surrounding sky. At this time, Tianyuan Mirror flew high into the sky, got bigger and bigger, covering a very wide area, and the blood rain was directly absorbed by the scarlet red mirror. The experts cupped their hands and showed gratitude to Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen had not acted at the critical moment, then they would have faced extreme difficulties in dealing with this blood rain. They felt like throwing up due to the repugnant smell of blood emanating from the blood rain. This was the time when everyone needed unity and cooperation. Yi Shiwen was not stingy and openly lent them a hand. Not to mention, it also allowed Tianyuan Mirror to reap great benefits. In any event, Yi Shiwen made the right decision. Only Emperor Chen looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. He neither appreciated Yi Zaiwen's strength nor the kindness rendered by him. He certainly was not afraid of this blood rain and continued to defend the front line. To be continued. Chapter 259. Chapter 259. Struggle on the ominous mountain. Only Emperor Chen looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. He neither appreciated Yi Zaiwen's strength nor the kindness rendered by him. He certainly was not afraid of this blood rain and rushed toward the front line on his golden lion. Under the crazy shower of blood, the team of experts was enjoying full protection of Yi Zaiwen's Tianyuan Mirror. After successfully bypassing the skeleton army, they bumped into the mighty army of zombies. These horrifying zombies were continuously gushing out from the gap in the Matrix method. Yi Shiwen and the others did not stop there and flew all the way, only to find a flaming bird in the distance that was constantly sweeping clean an area with its immortal flames which could burn the world itself. The team of experts rushed through the flaming area and reached so close to the ominous mountain for the first time. They saw a mighty team of undead, mainly consisting of high-ranked zombies, rushing down from the mountain. The most unusual scenery that greeted human experts was when they looked into the Matrix method and actually saw a variety of palace buildings on the mountain peak. Yes, an entire complex of ancient architecture with lots of crowded buildings covering the entire mountain area inside the Matrix formation. This should be the headquarters of the ancient mighty influence that initially ruled this island. Almost all of them are made up of rare materials. Yemo said, and considering how old a being he was, the amount of experience he possessed was not something Yi Shiwen could comprehend. Only after searching in several dimensions, one can find so many rare building materials. Most of these materials do not occur in this world. I must say that these buildings are more extravagant than Devil King's palace. Everyone was shocked after witnessing this endless complex of ancient architectural masterpiece. Built with an amazing combination of gold and jade and some strange materials, never seen before. However, right now, these buildings were acting as a breeding nest for a variety of zombies and evil spirits that were continuously coming out of the palace buildings. There was no end to this undead army, and after watching this scene, human experts felt chills down their spines. In Yi Zaiwen's mind, abruptly, the ancient seal characters cropped up. The same seal characters he had seen earlier in the ruins of an ancient civilization. That time, he was sucked into a scary illusion. He couldn't help but remember the same illusion once again. Boom! Boom! Numerous electric snakes could be seen creeping in the black clouds, and a terrifying thunder struck the palace. The palace couldn't withstand the enormous destructive power contained in the thunder strike and crumbled down. "I am here. Now come out!" Suddenly, a majestic voice resounded in all directions. "Buzz!" The low and dull muffled sound of a bell resounded and instantly sent out numerous sonic waves everywhere, while several electric snakes could be seen lurking in the dark cloud and seemed all prepared to bring down chaos in this world. "Get lost!" Accompanied by a loud shout, a few 100 feet wide pillar of golden light went straight into the sky and dispersed the dark, thundering clouds. As the voice fell, a middle-aged man flew out of the wreckage of palace and coldly looked towards the sky. He had a dignified bearing and was clad in a golden-colored emperor's robe. In the sky, the scattered clouds suddenly agglutinated again and revealed a huge glowing eye in the center. If you dare to go against the heavens' will, you cannot do that without a fight. A muffled voice echoed everywhere, and a huge lightning maliciously struck. Wasn't the illusion based on this location? Though it looked somewhat different after having undergone corrosion for thousands of years, Yi Shiwen still managed to recognize this place in one glance. Or the entire island was perhaps the background in this scene, and not just this part of the ominous mountain of the undead. Right after entering the Matrix method, human experts immediately felt a terrible pressure upon their bodies. They felt as if they would be crushed under this pressure. The strange force suddenly fell down from the sky and pushed them to the ground. Now they had no means to fly inside the Matrix formation. Certainly, there were some exceptions like Yi Shiwen with his golden devil wings, Warhawk riding his pet golden-winged eagle, Ji Moon riding her butterfly lizard, and Qing Su riding his yellow crane. After all, even if human experts were unable to use various techniques to fly, the ones with wings would naturally be able to fly in the air. The terrifying shrieks were resounding everywhere, and the whole scene was truly fear-inspiring. Watching the steady stream of zombies coming out of the palace buildings, everyone felt as if they had stepped in a zombie nest. Otherwise, how could there be hundreds of thousands of zombies in one place? I think this place is an ancient battlefield. All these zombies are clad in iron armors, armed with spears. It is clear that they used to be war soldiers who have now transformed into zombies. You are right, it's too terrifying. I also thought the same thing, and this place seems like the lair of a formidable ancient civilization. and it seems like they were attacked by some even more formidable force that led to countless casualties, which eventually led to the birth of these zombies. What kind of formidable force can destroy such a fearful influence, causing so many casualties? This is unbelievably shocking. Anyway, we have to uncover the seal. Otherwise, we certainly will not have any way out of this mess, an expert said in a loud voice and was heard by all other experts. This worked as a spark to help them recover from their shock states. They also began to think about the most vital point. If they did not do their best, then there was only a dead end waiting for them. At this time, the Matrix method began to revolve, and even though some formidable zombies and skeletons were constantly attacking the gap, desperately trying to widen it and ultimately destroy the entire Matrix method, but the Matrix method, despite having a gap, was intrepid and sparkling across the sky. In the sky, the stars were twinkling like never before, and as if announcing the incoming of an apocalypse. And suddenly, a huge beam of light detached itself from the Matrix formation and severely pounded on the ground, smashing many zombies and skeletons into minced meat. Joestar Matrix Method. The wolf cub opened its mouth wide and spelled out the name of this Matrix method. The energy of the stars was condensed by the Matrix formation, transforming into a huge dragon tail and severely hit the ground. Taking advantage of this situation, the team of human experts rushed forward. Even if they could not fly, they were still advancing at extremely high speeds. The huge palace-like buildings were connected with each other and were positioned as sections of ladders, one after another, while going up towards the mountain peak. The experts crossed the buildings one after another and continued to climb up while also encountering many zombies and skeletons on the way. They did not stop to engage the undead soldiers and continued to advance forward at maximum speed. They could not afford to waste any time and needed to stop the advancement of Thundead army into the Demon Island. The experts were getting agitated but did not dare to stay to fight with undead soldiers because staying behind was no different than dying a brutal death. Several pitiful screams echoed when experts were passing through a palace and were suddenly attacked by two pairs of jawbones as they directly dashed into the crowd of human experts and caught several experts at once. There came miserable cries along with spooky bone-rubbing sounds as if the flesh was being chewed directly from the bodies of people who were still alive and screaming. All of the experts who managed to evade this attack looked at each other with eyes filled with horror. After all, this was not something they witnessed every day. Now everyone knew how important it was to reach the summit as soon as possible and open the seal. Then only they could stop this nightmare. But this was something that has never been accomplished by anyone in the past thousands of years. No one had ever succeeded in taking off the seal, but they had no choice but to do it. They could only choose to go forward while temporarily ignoring the loss of their comrades. Of course, retreat was not an option. We must hurry, but we must be careful not to go near those palaces. At this time, Ching Su, who was riding a yellow crane, shouted from the sky and warned everyone. Yes, charge forward in order to survive. All experts were encouraged by this and rushed forward. Those palaces were extremely frightening and were being guarded by frightening monsters. They encountered much more terrifying monsters as they continued to get closer to the summit. By the time they reached halfway up towards their destination, almost half of their team had been sacrificed, leaving less than 500 experts. This was no ordinary loss, and especially for the southeast region that lost so many of its super elites. Most of the weaker human experts were eaten by the zombies, but the rest of the team did not stop to help them. This was certainly a heartless thing to do, but they had to endure it because if they had stopped to help others, then everyone would have died. There were several palace monsters who almost came close to single-handedly wipe out the entire team of experts. A rotting monster suddenly came out of a palace and chased after them. But the saving grace came as a fact that it was somehow bound to the palace and couldn't go past a certain limit. However, it still managed to drag away several experts and ate them. These experts had never experienced such a terrible place in their entire life. They were the so-called lucky and pampered geniuses of the southeast region who never had to face life-threatening situations to grow stronger. So this situation was pretty much of a disaster for them. Gradually, as they continued to climb up, the number of zombies reduced considerably, but their strength grew enough to compensate. They also bumped into a half-step legendary level zombie that was immediately engaged by Ching Su and Emperor Chen. But their combined strength was not enough to deal with it. The gap between Truth 9 stage and half-step legendary realm was too large. But fortunately, that zombie had spent more than a millennium and seemed to possess limited strength. Hence, after a while, it was overpowered by the team of human experts. Afterward, they slowly approached the summit. They had started to feel tired, but the great responsibility upon their shoulders was what boosting their morale and pushing them to try harder and achieve their goal. To be continued. Chapter 260. Chapter 260. If I cannot do it, you all will die. Only Emperor Chen, Ching Su, and Yi Shiwen were able to keep a straight face in such a dire situation. Other experts, including Warhawk, looked extremely exhausted. Some experts had their bodies completely soaked in sweat and were on the verge of collapse. Some were showing signs of breathing trouble while sustaining terrible suppression inside the Zhou star matrix formation. Come on, everyone. We are quickly nearing the pinnacle, Ching Su shouted. But at this time, the team of experts saw two zombies of half-step legendary realm pacing towards them from far behind. The crowd called out in alarm. They were scared and definitely not prepared to withstand such a toss. After all, one such zombie of half-step legendary realm had exhausted them to such a pitiful state. Then how could they even considering dealing with two of them simultaneously? What should we do now? There are two of them coming after us. I don't want to die after getting so close to our destination. Their goal was so close, but the boost in their morale did not survive long after the sudden appearance of two zombies of half-step legendary realm. Originally, they never thought much about half-step legendary realm, as their target was always the legendary realm. Half-step legendary realm was just a milestone in between, and being peerless geniuses, they never had a doubt about not reaching this realm. It was only a matter of time for them. However, after dealing with that last zombie, they came to realize that they were high mistaken to have underestimated the half-step legendary realm. After all, even if Emperor Chen and Ching Su were at the peak of Truth 9th realm, together they could not defeat one zombie of half-step legendary realm. But fortunately, these two zombies should have been weakened too like the previous one. Otherwise, despair would be the only thing awaiting them. Let me deal with this. At this time, Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said. Everyone was astonished and looked at Yi Shiwen, as it took more than just courage to dare and make such a statement. Yi Shiwen, have you gone out of your mind? Wu Xiaochuan quickly said. Let me explain. These two zombies were obviously partners when they were alive. It is easy to infer that from their actions. So, if they join forces and attack together, then we are doomed. It will be impossible to block their joint raid, so the best way is to divert one of them. Yi Shiwen said, and everyone nodded. His talent was not unknown to everyone, and regardless of his strength and level, he was still an elite peerless genius who just now made a valid point. However, everyone knew that distracting a zombie of half-step legendary realm would not be an easy task for one guy. This was a suicidal plan and would lead to certain death, but nobody wanted to die, making things more complicated and confusing. But Yi Shiwen willingly accepted to take up this risky position, which was quite shocking for everyone. If the strength is too weak for the job, then even if one of us managed to distract a zombie, it will be pointless as that person will be killed in an instant. And then the zombie will turn back to reunite with its partner. Yi Shiwen said. Therefore, only a few people are fit for this task. Everyone nodded, though there were a lot of people who were not willing to take such a risk. But at this time, all had to admit that it was indeed not possible for most people to successfully perform this task, honestly because they lacked required qualifications to do so. These people knew that even the strongest and most talented Emperor Chen was not daring to take up the task, since even he would admit that he did not have such capability to single-handedly stop a zombie. But why did Yi Shiwen came up with this idea, and why was he willing to take such a risk? Everyone was confused, especially Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan, as they were anxiously looking at Yi Shiwen and trying to understand what was going on in his mind. Why was he looking for death? However, I'm the most appropriate one for the job. Yi Shiwen said, a zombie's most vital advantage is not martial arts, but its body, which is much more formidable than demon beasts of the same level. Right now, your martial strength is limited due to suppression, but I am not affected because my body is strong enough to constrain a zombie. Yi Shiwen certainly hadn't made this decision in a heat of the moment. It was a well-thought-out plan, and he needed to be careful to make it work. They did not have the option to make a U-turn and get out of there. Yi Shiwen made this decision, keeping survival a top priority since he was willing to face the situation at hand without succumbing to escapism. Moreover, right now, the formidable powers of these zombies were limited according to what the tomb slave said. Not to forget that they were still more powerful than experts of Truth 9th stage. It was said that when gilded tyrant form would be practiced to the perfection level, then the practitioner should be able to tear apart mythical beings like gods and devils with bare hands. Although Yi Xiwen's practice had not yet reached such a high level, however, a zombie of half-step legendary realm was also not a mythical being. Only Yi Shiwen with his gilded tyrant body could contend with a zombie, while others simply did not stand a chance when fighting alone. Yi Shiwen knew that this was going to be a tough battle with unpredictable outcomes, and there was a chance that he might get killed. But he had no choice, because if these two zombies attacked together, then everyone was bound to die, including him. Only I can do this. And remember one thing. If I don't succeed, then you all will die for sure. Yi Xiwen's expression was blunt, but his words showed his boldness and confidence, to the extent that even his rivals suddenly began to feel that he was quite pleasing to the eyes. Wu Xiaoqian and Mu Ling tried again and again to persuade Yi Shiwen, but he had already made up his mind. Moreover, even these two understood that this was not only the best choice available to them, but also the most reliable choice. If Yi Shiwen stayed with the rest of the team and the other zombies attacked, then the entire team would face instant annihilation. Yi Shiwen rushed forward, and at the same time, his whole body was enveloped in a golden cloak. From afar, he appeared just like a golden god of war, a powerful being with extraordinary powers. He seemed out of place in this dark environment, as if a golden god woke up just now from the chaos in order to eradicate the chaos with his own hands. Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings and instantly flew towards the zombies while simultaneously thrusting his palm to shoot Dragon Chi towards a zombie. Boom! The Dragon Chi severely crashed into that zombie's body, and it started roaring again and again due to intense pain caused by this attack. At this time, the other zombie suddenly jumped towards Yi Shiwen and started chasing him. Yi Shiwen had succeeded in his plan. Now he turned around and flew all the way towards the mountain forest to lure the pursuing zombie into that forest. After luring it far into the forest, Yi Shiwen stopped and retracted his wings. When the zombie saw him stopping, it suddenly got excited and went towards Yi Shiwen. Its skinny claws stretched out to grasp him. The zombie was using tiger claw style to grasp Yi Shiwen to death. Yi Shiwen knew this and certainly would not let this happen. Since his whole body was already enveloped in a golden cloak, it was safe to say that gilded tyrant form was acting at its best. He shouted and thrust both his palms towards the incoming claws. His palms transformed into dragon claws, displaying the incomparable might of coiling dragon palm. One must know that coiling dragon palm was an ancient martial technique, and it was very difficult for an ordinary expert to comprehend it. Some disciples had tried in the past, but had lost their mind and soul as a result. Not to mention, Yi Shiwen also had to face a similar problem, and its mastery was fairly difficult for him, unless he would comprehend it to an extraordinary extent. However, Yi Shiwen actually managed to reach such an extent, but not by learning from others. He relied on his own insight that he obtained inside the mysterious space to comprehend coiling dragon palm in his own way. He could still see the figure of an indomitable spirit of a man that was constantly practicing coiling dragon palm in his mind. Yi Shiwen had spent a lot of time in the mysterious space to get insights about how to practice and implement it, but rather than copying that figure, he comprehended this technique in his own way to get better results, excluding the move sets he did not need and adding the ones he might need to improve the technique. Yi Shiwen applied this kind of learning, comprehending, and improving method on all techniques. So, he was always able to improve a technique to increase its power and decrease the difficulty of using it in an actual combat. Boom! The bone claws and coiling dragon claws severely collided with each other. It seemed as if the resulting explosion was caused by atomic collisions in general. This was a terrible collision, and the shock waves caused as a result swept across in all directions and wiped out a major section of the forest. Yi Shiwen had to retreat several steps, and he felt his chest tightening as a result. Even though he was protected by his gilded tyrant body, he still felt as if his body would fall apart. This zombie's body was really intrepid, unlike its skinny appearance. Other experts would have been torn apart by its claws, so the only saving grace, this time, was his golden tyrant body. Otherwise, even an expert of truth 9th stage would not stand a chance. Yi Shiwen was able to contend because the fighting styles of both him and the zombie relied on their respective formidable bodies. To be continued. Chapter 261. Chapter 261. Deathmatch with a half-step legendary zombie. This fight was certainly not going to be an easy one for Yi Shiwen. Even though the zombie was under suppression, it was still more powerful and had a much stronger body than him in comparison. So, in the end, Yi Shiwen did not hold a single advantage against it. But this did not mean that Yi Zaiwen's gilded tyrant form was utterly useless. He could take on the zombie by relying on the tyrannical defense of his golden body. But his inferior cultivation level was not at all a help. His battle strength was comparable to Truth 9th stage, and the gap between 9th stage and half-step legendary realm was too difficult to surmount. Zombies were infamous for their terrifying bodies in all of the 10,000 worlds. And the body of a zombie of half-step legendary level was easily going to have an iron threshold. Yes, there were thresholds above the iron threshold, such as copper threshold, silver threshold, golden threshold, etc. It was said that a zombie with golden threshold could actually contend with mythical creatures. Although this zombie had not yet fully entered the iron threshold phase, its body was still formidable when taken in Yi Zaiwen's perspective. Because Yi Shiwen still hadn't fully reached the true potential of gilded tyrant form due to his lack of level, as he was still in truth realm, and he would require the understanding of legendary realm to perfect it. Fortunately, that zombie's power was suppressed, or else Yi Shiwen wouldn't stand a chance. Even so, Yi Shiwen would have to participate in a deadly battle for survival. Yi Shiwen and the zombie fiercely clashed, and so did their tyrannical bodies, sweeping away anything in the past in the form of a horrifying explosion in the forest. Yi Zaiwen's golden body couldn't block the entirety of attack force, and traces if blood appeared from the corners of his mouth. Yi Shiwen was dedicated to his cause and was willing to face much worse for its sake. He had no alternative, and if he did not do his best, then everyone would be slaughtered, including his friends. Moreover, if everyone died, then who would complete the task? Therefore, Yi Shiwen had to bite the bullet and once again move forward to engage in battle. Yi Shiwen seemed prepared to do his best and go all out. Shwa! 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 He immediately took out poisonous dragon water control flag array and summoned Deepwater Black Snake King with the combined soul power of 19 Deepwater Black Snakes. The humongous beast instantly surrounded the zombie and kept on roaring, seemingly all prepared to attack at any time. However, the zombie immediately used its fists and kicks and gave several blows to the Deepwater Black Snake King. The Deepwater Black Serpent King's overall power had reached merely the 9th layer of Truth Realm and was only one step away from becoming a water dragon, but it was still knocked out like a stray dog. Yi Shiwen had predicted this outcome and was only using the power of the flag array to encircle the zombie and keep it distracted. Anyway, Deepwater Black Snake King was just a collection of energy, so Yi Shiwen was not afraid of its safety. Moreover, Deepwater Black Snake King used to be at half-step legendary realm when he was alive and would soon transform into a water dragon, becoming a valuable addition to his arsenal. Although after death, its power had greatly reduced, but the zombie's true power was also under suppression. If not alone, perhaps together they could thwart this zombie. The deep-water black snake king restructured its disintegrated body and once again attacked the zombie. Yi Shiwen took this opportunity to use Phoenix regeneration to restore his injuries. In a matter of few breaths, his condition was restored to peak condition, and he did not waste any time and immediately rushed towards the zombie to collaborate with Flag Array. Yi Shiwen had nurtured Flag Array exactly for situations like this. It was like his last card to deal with opponents at much higher level. He did not need to use it against the two tyrants because he himself was enough to deal with them. Plus, his pride did not allow him to use Flag Array to beat those two. Even after keeping in mind the large disparity between Truth 9th Stage and Half-Step Legendary Realm, Yi Shiwen knew that Flag Array could work very well for distracting an opponent, giving him enough time for strategizing and healing. With the help of this divine tool, he was confident that he could constrain and perhaps even kill this zombie. Yi Shiwen was not a fool and was not just fully depending on the Flag Array's distraction ability. In the end, he would have to wait patiently for the right time and personally act, using his golden Bodis invincible strength to defeat the zombie. One must know that this zombie's one punch could kill an expert of Truth 9th layer. Therefore, so far, Yi Shiwen had been acting cautiously and must continue to do so. For Yi Shiwen, this was a rare experience of fighting with a warrior of half-step legendary realm. Yi Shiwen was going to obtain enormous benefit from this battle. Tianyuan Mirror! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Tianyuan Mirror suddenly appeared out of nowhere and released a deep scarlet light that enveloped his body. Some of it penetrated into his body and merged with his flesh and blood, considerably raising his strength a notch. Yi Shiwen, this is an excellent opportunity. Kill this zombie and take its core Dan. It will drastically improve your cultivation level, and that too in a very short time. Yi Mo was standing on Yi Zaiwen's shoulder as he gave a suggestion in a very excited manner. In reality, Yi Zaiwen's inner state was still at Truth 7th Stage, and the zombie, despite being suppressed, was at half-step legendary realm, so its core Dan, when consumed, would be sufficient to help him have a breakthrough in a very short time. Then he would step into Truth 8th Stage, and his battle strength would reach half-step legendary realm, if not directly reaching the legendary realm. But after reaching the peak of Truth 9th layer, his fighting strength would actually reach legendary realm. At that time, he would have easily surpassed Emperor Chun and the others, thereby standing at the top of the younger generation of the Southeast region. Even while counting the top experts of the previous generation, he would still be considered at the top. For others, a zombie's core Dan, also called Zombie Dan, was a deadly poisonous drug, but that was not the case for Yi Shiwen, because his Tianyuan mirror could purify drugs, even the poisonous ones, and transform them into nourishing drugs. But anyway, he must first kill this tyrannical zombie to obtain its core. Yi Shiwen used his hands to tear a golden arc of light and shot it at the zombie. It seemed as if space itself had been torn to welcome the golden arc of light from another world, and all must submit in front of the glory of this endless divine beam of light from another worldly source. The zombie shot its palm, and its fingernails turned in a frightening claw, like an iron hook which quickly approached Yi Shiwen to trap his neck. The iron hook claw was a secret technique used by zombies, and it was considered a very frightening technique. Boom! The two sides clashed almost at the same time. Yi Zaiwen's golden body with God's defense, when coupled with the defense granted by Tianyuan Mirror, was finally able to compensate the gap. As soon as the two tyrannical beings collided, it seemed like the entire world would collapse. Bang! The terrible force generated in the explosion sent both of them flying in opposite directions. In the zombie's hand, a terrible crack opened up in its tough flesh, and purple blood oozed out and spattered on the ground. The blood was extremely toxic and corrosive and instantly began to corrode the ground upon contact. But Yi Shiwen was also not in a good shape. His gilded tyrant form disappeared all of a sudden, and his red blood splashed out while also containing traces of golden threads. The ominous and vindictive color got stronger in the zombie's eyes. It roared again, and once again ran towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not waste time, and fully concentrated on using Phoenix regeneration to repair his wound. Soon, his inner state was restored to its peak. He glanced at the zombie that was crazily running towards him, and he also immediately rushed forward to greet the incoming attack. Both sides were tyrannical, outrageously powerful, and their battle was based on the direct clash of bodies. Especially, there was an ever-increasing burning rage in the zombie's green eyes, as if it despised the very existence of this world, and wouldn't stop before it would bring upon death to this world. Yi Shiwen looked calm and tranquil. Just a crack in his flesh could not make him blink an eye. Phoenix regeneration technique was very magical and once again restored him to a perfect state. He once again shot and released a coiling dragon almost instantly. The coiling dragon looked upward and gave out a long and loud roar. Its roar was like a thunderclap, and at the same time, mighty dragon chi spread everywhere and restrained inchi and deadki which were overflowing in the vicinity. It was like a terrible explosion of light, the epitome of positive energy, the banisher of evil spirits. Yi Shiwen used coiling dragon palm, and suddenly, the entire world lost its color, as if only the coiling dragon existed in the world and nothing else. The coiling dragon rushed towards the zombie and attacked it with its claws. Yi Shiwen also claimed a shot at the same time, but in that zombie's eyes, instead of seeing a panic-stricken look, he saw a rather calm look. Just like demon beasts, it was not easy for zombies to gain wisdom and intelligence. Their very existence was not tolerated in the world and was basically called a blasphemous existence. The world law that was exploited for making zombies was also considered one of the most blasphemous laws in the world. Zombies just followed instincts and worked on the leftover instincts from when they were alive. But there were some extremely powerful zombies who still had an opportunity to develop wisdom. Yi Shiwen was facing a zombie that had not yet fully reached legendary realm. It was certainly better than ordinary zombies that followed only instincts, but it was also far from obtaining a complicated thinking ability. Its wisdom was very limited, and his intelligence had only slightly gotten rid of the so-called instinct-driven thought process. This was a bitter fight, and both sides were trying their best to eliminate the opponent as soon as possible. Each of their clashes was world-shattering and causing destruction in the surrounding areas. The battle had reached the phase in which blood was splashing in all directions. Sometimes, they were colliding in the mid-air and causing havoc in the forest area that had now simply been reduced to a wasteland. The zombie fiercely dashed towards Yi Shiwen like a bulldozer. The coiling dragon soared in the sky and fiercely strangled the zombie. It seemed as if the coiling dragon had come on a punitive expedition. However, even so, even after using various methods, there were still some disparities between the powers of the zombie and Yi Shiwen. To be continued. Chapter 262. Chapter 262. Slaughtered Zombie. It was a brutal contest of resilience and toughness among the two tyrannical masters. Once again, a mighty explosion occurred and blasted both of them in opposite directions. Both of them had their skins peeled off and blood oozing out of their wounds, but none of the two was willing to stop fighting. For a zombie, its body itself was the most powerful weapon. A zombie did not feel pain and wouldn't stop rampaging, even when its limbs were torn off or its head was severed from its body, because right after transforming into a zombie, its body was occupied by evil spirits, ending up making the whole corpse just a tool. So even if the head was severed from a zombie's body, other body parts would still continue to move, because a zombie's body was not controlled by its brain, but by the evil spirits. The zombie did not stop even when it was seriously injured in the last attack, and immediately rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen was standing like a mountain, while an endless amount of imposing aura was gushing out of his body, making him appear like a mighty god of war. Phoenix regeneration was working nonstop to heal his injuries and restore his inner state to its max, and in a short time, he was back to his peak condition. Yi Shiwen also did not care about the injuries since Phoenix regeneration was the biggest advantage he held, and by relying on it, he could always continue to maintain his present tyrannical battle efficiency. And even if that zombie did not care about its injuries, it still could not stop a gradual decrement in its battle efficiency, as it was constantly running amok and wasting energy. So, a long battle would actually be more favorable for Yi Shiwen, because even a zombie of half-step legendary realm could be slowly exhausted to death. Although Yi Shiwen would have to consume a lot of his life essence and vitality, he refused to give up. Otherwise, only a dead end would greet him if he was unwilling to make decisive sacrifices whenever needed. Retreat was not an option. It certainly wasn't an option. Roar! The zombie lifted its face upwards, roared, and released its poisonous chi in the surrounding area. Being a zombie, it was fully detached from reincarnation cycle, and just like a monster from hell, it released an ominous, imposing aura, breaking the shackles of the world and swept across in all directions. Yi Shiwen seemed all prepared to face the fury of this zombie. Yi Shiwen also roared, and there exploded a dazzling divine light from within his clothes, as if to conquer the entire universe and subdue the heavens. The battle had entered its final phase, and it did not seem like this battle was going on between a human and a zombie, but between two legendary beings belonging to two different universes. It had mostly been a contest between two invincible bodies, but the extent of this battle had not yet reached the most tragic state. Much worse was about to come. The zombie's green eyes were flashing fiercely, and it waved its fists in a strange manner to display zombie-specific martial art that derived chi from its arteries. Yi Shiwen also went all out and used Coiling Dragon Palm to summon a huge coiling dragon. It gave out a long and loud cry and soared into the sky, wantonly dancing, and it seemed like the whole belonged to it now, as if a real legendary dragon had come out of the fables to dominate the entire world. The coiling dragon's very presence was suppressing Inchi and Deadki in the atmosphere. Bang! The battle had entered an extremely frigid phase, and suddenly, Yi Zaiwen's chest was penetrated by the zombie's sharp iron claws. In the very next instant, the zombie retracted its claws and tore off a big chunk of flesh and meat from his chest. But things did not go well for the zombie as well. Its whole body was nipped by the coiling dragon, and as a result of that, its bones were now visible through the several wounds spread all over its body. Yi Zaiwen's golden defense had been broken by the zombie's iron claws, and a fatal wound could be seen oozing blood from his chest area. But at the same time, his wound was also healing at an incredibly fast speed, and within a few breaths' time, he was back to normal. Of course, there was no trace of any wound on his chest region, and he was once again at his peak condition. Boom! Both sides severely clashed again and caused a massive explosion in the sky, resulting in a burst of dazzling golden light and splashing blood in all directions. Rumble! Rumble! Yi Shiwen noticed that each time the zombie attacked with its claws, it drew the power of world laws and invoked suppression upon him as a result of the fluctuations in world laws. One must know that suppression effect of world laws was applicable only to the experts of Truth Realm and below, because it was extremely difficult for them to comprehend world laws, and they easily succumbed under their might, in turn facing an overwhelming suppression. This was actually the biggest difference between an expert at Truth Ninth Peak and an expert at Half-Step Legendary Realm. It was very difficult to comprehend world laws, and that was the reason why only a small numbers of experts entered into the half-step legendary realm. Even in the younger generation, only a handful of experts below the age of 150 years were able to step into half-step legendary realm, but there were many experts at Truth 9th stage in comparison. Although there were several legendary level experts in Yuan school, but that was the result of 1,000 years of accumulation. And considering the fact that there had been millions of disciples in the history of Yuan school, there were only a few dozen disciples who had managed to step into the legendary realm. So, one could see that legendary experts were quite rare existences. There were not more than 200 legendary experts in the entire Great U state, and that 2 out of tens of billions of people. So, one could understand how difficult it really was to step into the legendary realm. A legendary level expert was capable of invoking complete suppression. When considering the elites from all of the 10 countries of Southeast region, there were only 20 to 30 people who had managed to achieve the legendary realm before reaching the age of 150. This meant that on an average, only 2 to 3 people per country were able to achieve such a feat. Chief Fifan was one such example, as he was able to reach half-step legendary realm at a young age. So even if there were hundreds of true disciples at Truth 9th stage, some being at the peak of Truth 9th stage, but even so, they were still considered nothing in front of the 4 pro disciples. This was a crucial step, and if this step was taken within a short period of time, then it would directly determine their future success. If an ordinary expert was facing such law fluctuations which were being orchestrated by the zombie, then that expert would have been in an utterly miserable state by now. But thankfully, Yi Shiwen had also comprehended a section of the law debris. The depth of his comprehension was not comparable to that of the zombie, but was enough to offset the suppression effect that was being caused by the fluctuations in world laws. Heaven and earth seemed to have lost their luster in front of the tyrannical battle going on between these two monsters. Spiraling energies were spreading in all directions. Thundering explosions and shock waves had reduced this entire forest area to a wasteland. Yi Shiwen was not at all worried. On the contrary, he was very excited to have come across such a rare opportunity to experience fighting with a higher-level tyrannical monster, a monster that possessed an invincible body just like him. Perhaps he had a subconscious lust for violent and bloody battles, and he himself was unaware about that. The zombie was getting injured again and again, while Yi Shiwen continued to remain at his peak condition thanks to Phoenix regeneration. With the help of this technique, he could repeatedly challenge opponents of much higher level than his own. Not to mention, he could also participate in deadly battles without worrying about getting seriously injured. He dared to challenge a tyrannical opponent not just to sharpen his own skills, but also to obtain the biggest advantage in the form of battle experience and also in the form of an invincible confidence level. Most people, even the so-called peerless geniuses, were afraid to do so, but Yi Shiwen dared to take this risk thanks to Phoenix regeneration. If anyone could see this battle, they would surely feel frightened to no limit. The zombie had slowly started to lose its advantage over Yi Shiwen because it was getting tired and was taking a lot of damage. Although Yi Shiwen was at his peak condition, he still could not hide his pale complexion. This was the consequence of overusing his life essence. Even his golden defense wasn't able to cover up his pale complexion. In other words, Yi Shiwen was burning his own life energy for the sake of winning this battle. Everyone cherished their lives. After all, their lifespan was limited, and no one wanted to consume their own lifespan and die early, because time was very crucial to cultivate and step into next realm in order to increase the lifespan. However, Yi Shiwen was not afraid of losing several years from his lifespan. In just a few years' time, he had reached Truth 7th stage all the way from Hotian 3rd stage. It could be said that his cultivation speed was insanely fast, and so, unlike others, he did not need to spend a lot of years to step into the legendary realm in order to obtain a huge lifespan. Moreover, he always thought that life was not for saving up. People must fearlessly move forward and live the way they want. The zombie roared, and its helmet and armor suddenly shattered into pieces. When it was alive, it used to be a general and had fought for countless years, killing countless enemies in his career. So far, the battle was stuck in a tie, but one thing was clear, that it was not going to resign in front of Yi Shiwen. The zombie blasted a punch and swept away an endless amount of poisonous deadki towards Yi Shiwen. He noticed that the golden defense had started to melt due to its corrosive effect. "Looks like I do not need to retrograde today to cut down a legend," Yi Shiwen said in his heart, and finally began to go all out without any restraint. He immediately used coiling dragon palm and an endless amount of dragon chi, combined with golden divinities, collided with the zombie's attack in midair, and the resulting explosion was so vast that it camouflaged the entire sky. Suddenly, the ground cracked open when a massive sword intention condensed in his hand. Yi Shiwen had also embedded golden divinities into this sword intention. This terrifying golden sword intention was capable of killing demons, devils, ghosts, goblins, and all sorts of creatures in one fell swoop. Yi Shiwen stared coldly at the zombie. The coiling dragon was roaring again and again. At this time, Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings and instantly arrived in front of that zombie. Boom! The terrifying golden sword intention struck horizontally as if to puncture the world itself, and it instantly crashed into its body. The zombie used its hands to block this attack, but the destructive power of golden divinities was so tyrannical that it directly routed the zombie's defense and pierced through its body, destroying all the evil spirits that were occupying its body. To be continued, dash. Chapter 263. Chapter 263. Slaughters again, boom. After that hit, the zombie collapsed on the ground. Hoo-hoo! Yi Shiwen was breathing heavily as he just now used his most powerful attack. He had been hiding it from the zombie all this time and used it right when he saw an opening. Yi Shiwen was assuming that there was a small part of wisdom still present in that zombie's mind, so he remained patient, and even if he was facing tough moments during the fight, he still continued to wait till the time was right and finished off the zombie in one shot. Yi Shiwen took a break and let Phoenix Regeneration heal his injuries, though this time, the consumption of life essence was not much. Then he dug out the zombie Dan from its body and immediately flew in the direction where the team of experts was still fighting with the other zombie. Right now, Emperor Chen and the other experts were extremely exhausted. They were having a hard time dealing with a half-step legendary zombie. It was rampaging, killing people, and almost no one could stop it. Even the joint attacks of Emperor Chen and Qing Su were not enough to stop it or inflict serious injuries. It was being difficult for these experts to attack the zombie due to the fluctuations in world laws surrounding the zombie. The disparity in strength was too huge to surmount, and dozens of human experts had already been killed by it. Only 300 individuals were still alive, which basically indicated that the team of human experts had faced heavy losses in this regard. Emperor Chen gave out a long and loud battle cry and produced an avalanche of energy leaking out of his body. The energy condensed to form a shadow that looked very similar to him, except it had a pair of abnormally cold eyes. Although he was having a hard time dealing with this zombie, he was not at all scared of it and attacked without hesitation. This was a terrifying attack skill where he was using his own shadow as a backup. He could not throw in the towel, especially when Yi Shiwen was risking his own life to distract a zombie, and he was doing it on his own. But here, so many people were together and still unable to deal with one zombie. This was simply a big blow to his pride and self-esteem. Although he knew that Yi Zaiwen's case was special as he happened to have a strong body, his pride still would not allow him to admit defeat. He wanted to be stronger than anyone no matter what. Emperor Chen's attack also incurred huge fluctuations in the world laws. It was obvious that he had already started to meditate and comprehend world laws, preparing to enter the half-step legendary realm. Therefore, law suppression was not working on him. One could notice this trait in his violent and frightening imposing aura. Boom! Emperor Chen's fist blasted on the zombie's tough body and exploded into a burst of terrifying, rippling waves of light. It seemed like this fist was aiming to destroy the stars. Boom! This punch was extremely terrifying, but the zombie simply disregarded its own safety and retaliated by throwing its fist at him. Although the zombie's fist was basically a clenched bone claw, it still caused a massive explosion as if to blow away the universe itself and reopen the world of chaos. Stop! At this time, Qing Su shouted loudly and his spiritual voice echoed in the area. As a result of that, the zombie's movement slowed down a bit and Emperor Chen, who was sitting on his pet lion, managed to dodge quickly and somehow escape the range of the fist attack. Even if a half of the zombie's body was severely injured by Emperor Chen's attack, it was still very terrifying to fight against and held tyrannical prowess. Emperor Chen's eyes were filled with anger. He was what you'd call a slave of his pride. He was sitting straight on his pet lion like a mountain and suddenly rushed towards that zombie. He once again used the same attack to finish off the zombie in one fell swoop. Boom! The power capable of shattering stars once again broke out and spread sections of Tao everywhere. Qing Su was also closely following him, and staying by his side. This is what one would call immeasurable revere. Emperor Qin's shadow that had stayed behind him all this time suddenly resonated with the flashing Tao. It is said that you are in Tao, and Tao is within you. Right now, this shadow had thoroughly merged with Tao, thereby increasing its power drastically. Boom! Emperor Chun, his shadow, and Qing Su together attacked the zombie and swept away mighty shock waves in all directions. Bang! But in a blink of an eye, his shadow dissipated and both he and his pet lion were sent flying miles away from there. He spurted out blood from his mouth, and blood was also oozing out from several wounds on his body. Qing Su was also sent flying all the way until he was caught by his pet crane. This was really a horrifying collision. Meanwhile, the zombie killed 2 more people when everyone resorted to all sorts of martial arts and divine tools to attack it. They basically tried to take advantage of this explosion as an opportunity to attack it. Boom! 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 It was a terrible collision, and the zombie certainly wasn't able to react rapidly. By the time it made its move, it had already been attacked and severely injured by the joint attack from almost 300 experts. However, this joint attack was not enough to completely eliminate it. Its whole body was covered in its own blood and looked like a tattered sack of rotten meat. But it was still roaring, and its formidable pressure was frightening people, making it difficult for them to fight it head-on. Emperor Qin's body was also covered in wounds, but he still stood firmly. He blundered by underestimating a half-step legendary zombie, and by also underestimating the gap between half-step legendary realm and truth ninth peak. Not to mention, this zombie was already under the suppression that appeared once in 1,000 years. So, in other words, if it was at its full potential, then no one would have survived till now. Suddenly, there came a distant howling sound, and the very next instant, a human figure arrived at a tyrannical speed and struck with a long blade, instantly chopping the zombie, from head to foot, into 2 halves. Is that Yi Shiwen? Yes, Yi Shiwen is back, but wait. Where is that other zombie? What happened to it? Yes, don't tell me he killed that zombie. That's impossible. Everyone was extremely shocked by his unexpected arrival. Was it actually possible that Yi Shiwen actually managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie all by himself? The very thought of it was striking terror in their hearts. But they had to accept the reality that Yi Shiwen was standing in front of them and was uninjured. Emperor Chun was shocked the most and staring at Yi Shiwen as if he was witnessing a miracle. Yi Xiwen's plan was to distract that zombie, but if he really killed it, then this was really no different than a miracle in the eyes of other experts. If I cannot do it, we all will die. All of them remembered the statement he made before departing, succinct but powerful. This kind of monstrous self-confidence was simply known to invincible beings. Yi Xiwen's golden body released a golden beam of light that instantly crashed into that zombie's almost bisected body. Then he shot his palm out that released a golden dragon into the sky. Roar! The zombie was roaring with a look of terror and confusion in its eyes. It also threw its iron claw fist at Yi Shiwen. Boom! Its tyrannical flesh was actually blown apart by Yi Xiwen's golden dragon. Afterward, Yi Shiwen grabbed its arms and tore them off its body, which made painful, heart-wrenching sounds. Then he threw those arms far away from its body. Right now, Yi Shiwen was at his peak condition, and nothing could stop him. But this zombie was weakened and injured. Yi Shiwen once again pounded his palm on its torso, and that resulted in an explosion. Everyone was alarmed and afraid, thinking in their hearts that who was actually more terrifying, Yi Shiwen or zombie. The way Yi Shiwen was dismembering the zombie in front of everyone, they were astonished as to how he was even able to do that. They obviously did not know that Yi Shiwen possessed the golden body of gods. The zombie's roars were scary and terror-inspiring. All of a sudden, there was a great explosion caused by Yi Shiwen's palm attack, and he managed laying a major blow to its life force. In the end, he finished it off by stamping on its chest and crushing its chest region. The golden divinities crawled from his leg into its body and destroyed all the evil spirits occupying its body. Now the only thing left was taking its core down. Chapter 264. Chapter 264. Supreme figure. Everyone was stunned and giving dumbfounded looks to Yi Shiwen. They couldn't believe their own eyes. The zombie was literally unable to fight back, and Yi Shiwen so effortlessly killed it in front of them, as if it was such an easy task. Yi Shiwen managed to complete a task that such a large team of experts was unable to do. This was simply a miracle in their eyes. Yi Shiwen was merely an expert of Truth 7th stage, while their team had several experts at the peak of Truth 9th stage. But Yi Shiwen managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie, whereas their entire team couldn't do it. So how did Yi Shiwen succeed? And what was the real extent of his power? Emperor Chun and few other experts actually knew how Yi Shiwen was able to kill that zombie, because it was already seriously injured and had also exhausted most of its energy. In comparison, Yi Shiwen's combat effectiveness was at its peak condition. Not to mention the zombie was under suppression, and it was mostly relying on its formidable body to fight. But once again, Yi Shiwen had an advantage of having a similarly formidable and uninjured body. In short, the zombie's defeat was inevitable the moment Yi Shiwen became its opponent. However, only a few experts were able to figure out the facts behind this miracle. Also, it would not be wrong to say that if there was someone else in place of Yi Shiwen, they wouldn't be able to kill the zombie the way he did it. Although some experts were aware of the special circumstances under which Yi Shiwen killed the zombie, they were still very shocked by a scene in which how easily a half-step legendary zombie was killed by a guy who lacked 3 levels in comparison. This was just insane and totally outrageous for the experts who were at higher levels. Yi Shiwen's dominating aura, as well as self-confidence, was inducing envy and restlessness in their hearts. However, right now, they did not have time and intention to be sighing and feeling that way, because the allied armies of demon beasts and ghost soldiers were indulged in a crazy battle with skeletons and zombies and were slowly advancing towards the peak, slaughtering and pushing back the undead along the way. It was obvious that this battle was approaching its most tragic phase, so they must finish their mission as soon as possible. The Allied forces were doing their best to contain the undead army and push them backward, but it could be seen that they were not going to last very long. The urgent matter at hand was to take off the seal and end this crazy battle. "We are running out of time, so let's hurry," Yi Shiwen said. "We need to go to the summit as soon as possible to take off the seal. Otherwise, we won't have a way out of this mess. The battlefield is quickly shifting towards the peak, and trust me guys, you don't want to be anywhere close to that battlefield." Yi Shiwen was aware of the consequences they would have to face if they did not take off the seal quickly, and he also knew that they did not have a lot of time left either. The fierce undead army was truly horrifying, so the team of human experts couldn't afford to waste time as they needed to take off the seal before the Allied forces would completely exhaust their strength. Irrespective of their envy and hatred towards Yi Shiwen, the experts had to agree with his words. Right now, rather than bickering and being envious, they needed to show courage and concern towards the situation and must act as fast as possible. The team of experts once again rushed towards the summit, meanwhile, avoiding formidable zombies and skeletons on the way. They were also steering away from the palaces since almost every palace was inhabited by terrifying monsters of the legendary realm and above, but they seemed to be imprisoned inside the palaces and couldn't come out. Finally, the team took a section of road that led them straight to the summit. This section of road was too terrible, and the team bumped into a few half-step legendary zombies on the way. But the good news was that these zombies appeared alone on separate times, and the team somehow managed to either evade or distract them, whichever was deemed necessary in the situation at hand. On the hilltop, they saw a magnificent palace spread across the entire summit. It looked like a sky palace, and its size was almost equivalent to that of a small town. Yi Shiwen carefully observed the entire palace and saw a giant stele hanging in the sky, right above the palace. There were big characters engraved over this giant stele and looked very dazzling. A terrifying aura was transmitting from that stele as if trying to suppress the entire world. However, a terrifying aura was surging from the palace also and rising into the sky. The palace's aura was confronting the stele's aura that was pressing down from above, thereby creating equilibrium between the two tyrannical auras in the buffer region between giant steel and palace. In this buffer region, space was collapsing and restoring itself frequently in a cyclic process, and one could also see cold, pitch-black debris of space floating there. The experts were deeply affected by this scene, which was quite terror-inspiring. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception, because he sensed a rogue feeling of terror lurking in his own heart. Seeing space collapsing and restoring right in front of their eyes, it seemed as if they were standing on the edge of the world where two worlds were colliding with each other, giving rise to such an apocalyptic scene. However, they had no time to think about the reason behind this phenomenon. Rather, they immediately went towards the palace. A signboard was floating high in the air. Heaven's Peak Palace. It was hard to speculate the level of the civilization that left behind such a legacy thousands of years ago. Yi Shiwen did not wait and immediately rushed forward towards the palace. As soon as they entered the palace compound, they heard intermittent sounds of a bell ringing unceasing. Yes, it was the same bell ringing that has summoned these young geniuses to the Demon Island. They rushed all the way inside the palace compound and actually saw an ancient clock bell ringing constantly. Ding-dong, ding-dong, ding-dong. The bell was ringing nonstop and also releasing fluctuating sound waves, but only in its vicinity due to some kind of barrier. The answer to this was a huge seal that was hovering over this ancient bell and releasing a mysterious glow that contained a dominating power, very similar to the power contained in world laws, but much more intense. Everyone noticed that the seal's power was restricting the bell's power. "That's the seal we are looking for," an expert said aloud while his eyes were totally focused on the seal. The tomb slave had informed them about this seal and also told them that they must remove the seal in order to quell the undead army. While they were all set to finish the task, all of a sudden, the palace doors made a squeak sound and opened wide. And a tall figure with a demonic aura wantonly revolving around him came out. His form was blurred and fuzzy and basically looked like a human shadow with a pair of red eyes. He also possessed a terror-inspiring, demonic aura. The experts suddenly stopped when they saw this shadowy figure and instinctively took one step back. They had seen a lot of weird things on this island, but this was probably the weirdest of them all. Ding-dong! The bell suddenly began to ring faster, and even though a seal was placed on it, it still managed to shoot a condensed form of sonic energy at that shadow. The shadowy figure lifted his claws, directly grabbed that mass of sonic energy, and tore it apart. Boom! At this time, the fluctuating mass of energy surrounding the bell suddenly condensed and seemed to have actually opened up a portal, and all of a sudden, a celestial figure slowly walked out of it. He was clad in an emperor's long robe and possessed an unimaginable, imposing aura. The human experts were so much affected by his presence that they felt like bowing down on their knees and worshiped this divine being. And at this time, Tianyuan Mirror suddenly began to shiver violently, as if feeling a hint of provocation. Yes, Yi Shiwen had never seen Tianyuan Mirror acting this way, no matter what kind of tyrannical expert he had faced so far. "Yi-mo, what's happening here?" Yi Shiwen asked loudly in his mind. But he suddenly realized that Yi-mo was fully suppressed inside Tianyuan Mirror and did not dare to say anything. It seemed as if Yi-mo no longer existed inside the mirror and had completely disappeared without a trace. Something like this happened only once, when that tyrannical sword expert had suddenly appeared and used his sword intention on by Ma Jiao disciples. But even back then, Yi-mo was not this much scared, which indicated that this celestial figure was definitely an emperor-level expert. After coming out of the portal that appeared on the bell, the celestial emperor slowly walked away from the bell, but soon bumped into the seal. However, he quickly bypassed the barrier and looked coldly at that shadow. As soon as the celestial emperor walked out of the barrier, no one in the team of human experts was able to bear the incredible pressure and kneeled down on the ground. Even Emperor Chun and the other top experts were no exceptions. In fact, even Yi Shiwen was not able to resist this pressure despite having the support of Tianyuan Mirror. Ever since he obtained Tianyuan Mirror, He was never bothered by his opponent's coercion, which was more of a joke in his eyes. Tianyuan Mirror was a top-tier divine tool of the Devil King himself, so only those experts, who were at a level higher than him, would be able to suppress Yi Shiwen. Therefore, Yi Shiwen had never experienced suppression from coercion. Even a high-level legendary expert wouldn't succeed to bring Yi Shiwen to his knees by simply using their imposing aura. However, now that he did not have the shelter of Tianyuan Mirror, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure rampaging upon his body. "Insolent fool!" The Celestial Emperor spoke, and it seemed as if his words were promulgating the law to be enforced. As soon as he said these words, everyone felt like they did the biggest mistake of their life by coming here and must apologize if they wanted to live. But the Celestial Emperor did not even look at Yi Shiwen and the others, who, like a group of ants, did not deserve his attention at all. Those words were actually meant for that shadow. The Celestial Emperor looked sternly at the shadow, and space around him began to fluctuate and disintegrate. To be continued. Chapter 265. Chapter 265. Shocking secret in the eyes of such a supreme figure. This mortal world was insignificant in a way, and same could be considered about the mortals. It could be seen that he had experienced innumerable eras and must have been to several worlds. It was as if he had crossed the river of time to appear here, and it was fair to say that mortals wouldn't be able to comprehend such an entity. He possessed the kind of imposing aura only known to have been displayed by great tyrants of the universe. The kind of suppression that could make everyone submit to this domineering figure, just like the legendary gods mentioned in fables. Even if everyone knew that this was possibly not his main body, but seeing such a supreme-level figure standing right in front of them still made them have a feeling of prostrating themselves sincerely and worship him. I would not kneel down in front of anyone. Never. Even when the god itself appears in front of me. Emperor Chen clenched his teeth and was enduring the incredible pressure. The other experts heard him growl and saw how he was unwilling to surrender to this supreme figure and not willing to kneel down. His legs were firmly fixed on the ground, as if two iron pillars were nailed to the ground, unwilling to bend. His face was covered in cold sweat, and his entire body was trembling fiercely. He was a very stubborn man, indeed. Not just Emperor Chun, even Qing Su, Yi Shiwen Warhawk, and the other top experts were also refusing to kneel down and were still somehow standing. Their stance was simple. Humiliation was worse than dying, so they would rather die standing instead of kneeling down and live. These were the few experts who possessed invincible will along with great ambitions. Those who wanted to dominate the entire world. In that case, how could they just bend their knees and prostrate in front of anyone? Indeed, this supreme figure seemed to come from a superior race from ancient times, but what they were seeing was certainly just a shell of the original being, and if they bowed down in front of it, then it would utterly destroy their indomitable hearts. After experiencing this, one thing was guaranteed, that the impression left by this domineering, celestial figure would never ever leave their hearts. At this time, all of the demon beast cubs, namely Golden Lion, Yellow Crane, Dragon Butterfly, and Golden-Winged Eagle, felt weak in the legs and fell down on the ground, and began to cry loudly with large bundles of tears rolling down from their eyes. The Golden Lion cub was fortunately quite ignorant and did not understand what was going on, but the wolf cub undeniably possessed far more wisdom than the other cubs and was a lot more mature as well. But at this time, he was the saddest one, and his howling sound was indicating the intense sadness in his heart. He was crying tears of sorrow, not like an ignorant cub that cries for himself, but like an adult that was crying due to a serious reason that was causing him pain. His sorrowful crying voice and howls, extremely pitiful appearance explained his tragic state. Even Mu Ling was confused because he could not understand how a foul-mouthed, yet wise wolf cub suddenly began to behave like this. Yi Shiwen was also shocked by this and did not know what to do. The way the wolf cub was crying right now, it seemed as if he was grieving the death of his father. The supreme figure walked forward step by step, and as soon as he began to walk, a golden lotus emerged from the ground. All eyes were immediately focused on that magnificent golden lotus, and they all saw that it was not condensed out of his power, but purely manifested out of some pure world law. In other words, the world itself honored his presence by giving him a tribute in the form of this grand and pure golden lotus. It made everyone have a chill feeling inside their hearts when they tried to analyze this by considering the extent of this supreme figure's power and the recognition he got from the world itself. It was as if they were like commoners in front of a noble existence. Yi Shiwen was instantly reminded of a legendary character from an ancient fable and how it was impossible for others to figure out the extent of his cultivation. Similarly, there was no way to try and speculate the cultivation level of this supreme figure, but it could be said that it was far, far beyond the legendary realm. The supreme figure walked step by step with a sharp and all-encompassing vision, observing everything around him. Whenever he took a step, the world trembled around him and trails of violent aura would ravage the space around him. That supreme figure's eyes looked like that of an eagle, filled with confidence and pride. Not to mention he possessed an invincible majesty, to an extent that no one was daring to look him in the eye. How can someone be so strong? A young expert said with a dumbfounded expression on his face. This was the first time he experienced something like this, and couldn't help but express his shock. Demon Emperor, you used to be strong, but that is a thing of the past. The shadow suddenly issued an owl-like raucous laughter. But, no matter how magnificent you were during your lifetime, death is always the final verdict and shows you the path to a home you can return to. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death, but unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state. The shadow said in a mocking tone, Demon Emperor? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even an ordinary person with basic general knowledge would know the weight contained in these two words. The very term emperor held a major significance irrespective of which race's name was put ahead of it. For example, human emperor, demon emperor, devil emperor, and so on. But using these terms casually without any truth or basis was an absolute taboo. Even most tyrannical experts of the world were afraid to call themselves so because it was no different than courting death by proclaiming oneself to be one. This was not a talk about one world, but all of the 10,000 worlds, and a demon emperor was a being who was not just a local lord. He was the emperor of an entire demon race that was spread throughout the 10,000 worlds community. You just could not claim to be an emperor and not face the consequences. And those who dared to call themselves emperors also had the ability to support their claim. Even in the ancient times, no one dared to claim of being an emperor so easily. Yi Shiwen did not know much about the history of demon race or demon emperor, but it was quite understandable if one would say that this supreme figure had frightened the 10,000 worlds community in the ancient times when demon race used to be at its peak. Such a great being, even if he was not a human being, was worth giving respect. At this time, Yi Shiwen remembered a myth from his previous life. The myth talked about the Jade Emperor who had ascended the throne of the heaven, but was it actually the legendary Demon Emperor who actually did it? Demon Emperor of the heaven. This was just a myth, but Yi Shiwen could still tell the undeniable similarities. This was enough to instantly accelerate his breathing out of surprise and excitement. Demon Emperor, Heaven's Peak Palace, and a lost civilization. These all things indicated startling similarities between the myth on the earth and the things he saw here in this world. What exactly happened in the ancient times? There were traces of Demon Emperor's existence in several legends and myths on the earth, but most of them were unofficially recorded ones. They did not give a solid proof about the existence of Demon Emperor of the heaven. Jade Emperor was the one who dominated the heaven in the legend of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Yi Shiwen could see a solid connection between the hidden history of this world and the myths on the earth, and in both cases, Demon Emperor had been kept a secret officially. He could faintly feel that perhaps he had come across something that was surprisingly being kept a universal secret. However, Yi Shiwen's breathing accelerated not because of these legends, but because these things could clearly be linked with the legends on the earth. Could it be that the earth was related to the heaven of this world? Yi Shiwen was most concerned about this point. Initially, when he had come to know that he crossed to this world from the earth, he was devastated because he had read so many novels on the same plotline and had never read about anyone returning home. However, today his palpitation accelerated suddenly when he speculated that these worlds were somehow linked. If the Earth was also in a world that was part of the 10,000 Worlds community, then he might be able to cross the worlds. He then would have an opportunity to go back home. Thinking of this, he simply was unable to restrain himself. One must know that although he had fully invested his time and heart in gaining the power to be able to protect his current family, he had always dreamed of returning to the Earth. He considered it a distraction and would always suppress the thoughts about going back to the Earth. If someone was to tell him now that everybody wants to cross to a different world because it's thrilling, then why did he want to return to the Earth? Then he would certainly slap them into oblivion. Only an idiot would willingly want to pass through to a different world, or perhaps people with special situations want that to happen. When considering Yi Zaiwen's case, he never involved himself in romance and women whom he thought was a waste of time and money. He was not an orphan, and neither was he an outcast. He was neither struck by the lightning, nor was he hit by a truck. He used to be the most average kind of person with most average lifestyle in his past life, and never cherished the idea of going to a different world. He was separated from his family and loved ones just like that. Family was always the most important for him. And even in this world, he treasured his family more than anything, especially because he lost it one time and did not want to go through the same pain again. No wonder his enemies had to face the wrath of the emperor whenever they threatened his family's security. Now it seemed like it was possible to go back to the Earth, so how could he not be excited about it? Although this news might very well be useless in the current scenario, as crossing worlds was an inaccessible concept for Yi Shiwen, and even after finding out that it was possible, he might not be able to find a way to do that. But even so, he was still optimistic about it. Yi Zaiwen felt that this shadow's words very shocking, to be honest. The decline of ancient heaven on the earth should have in the records, but there were none. As if something happened at all, and this led to the formation of a flawed history. According to what the shadow said, there seemed to be some kind of relationship between the decline of the ancient heaven in two different worlds. As if it was the result of the direct decline of the ancient heaven that was unique to all worlds, including the earth. Ancient heaven had innumerable powerhouses, and their only commander was the Demon Emperor. All of the 10,000 world community was scared of Demon Emperor, whose eternal glory had spread across the worlds. Such an almighty and tyrannical influence that continued to exist for millions of years actually declined when challenged by the unknown influence to which the shadow belonged to. This deduction was extremely shocking. Emperor Chen and the others were also in shock after they heard the ancient secret that actually blew up their minds. Although they did not know about the famous myth on the earth, this was still more than enough to leave them in utter shock. To be continued. Chapter 266. Chapter 266. Departure from the island. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death. But unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state. The shadow said in a mocking tone, I never thought that you would be hiding in the dark like a rat, and still haven't withered away. Demon Emperor said proudly, in a gallant manner. Ha 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 ha, Demon Emperor, you are ignorant and still haven't understood that if there is light in this world, there has to be darkness as well to maintain the balance. And remember that no matter how long you manage to survive, only death is eternal in the world. The shadow laughed in a weird way, as if mocking the Demon Emperor. There are some things that even you never understood after all this time. Demon Emperor said in a somewhat indifferent tone, You have overreached yourself by daring to come here in your true body. I hope you are prepared to pay the price for your foolishness. Clang! 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 There were several light flashes around his body, with clanging sounds of 10,000 swords everywhere, along with the formation of a gigantic sword key and beams of light shooting everywhere in the sky. This sword intention attack was much more tyrannical than the sword intention attack that Yi Shiwen learned from a sword emperor long time ago. The Demon Emperor's sword intention was pure and extremely frightening when considering the fact that it contained the power of world laws as well. In an instant, an endless amount of sword ki coagulated to form a huge and thick curtain of swords in the sky. Everyone saw this scene and could not help but swallow their saliva. They could not make a guess about Demon Emperor's cultivation level, but judging from his awe-inspiring sword ki, it was not difficult for them to speculate that he was several realms above them. It seemed like the Demon Emperor used several world laws in conjunction for this one attack. Everyone was panic-stricken and was scared of the aftermath of this attack. They knew that even one touch of this sword ki could instantly kill them. They did not dare to stay outside and rushed into the palace. Everyone hastily entered the palace, and at this time, a loud noise resounded everywhere. An incomparably terrifying beam of light shot up into the sky and exploded, thereby instantly annihilating the palace's roof. Two figures leaped up into the sky. One was the Demon Emperor, and other was that shadow. Demon Emperor was floating at a very high altitude, but his figure looked fuzzy and dimmer, as if his whole body was enveloped in a fog. Space around him was distorted, and no one could see his face as a result of that. Yi Shiwen felt as if he was looking at a sword god, a being who was capable of cutting the sky and chopping the earth into pieces. In fact, a sword god was said to be capable of chopping destiny as well. Numerous Tao-based world laws were twinkling around his body and driving an almost endless amount of sword ki in the air, all prepared to kill anyone who would dare to come close to it. The large amount of sword ki fragmented into numerous swords, and each and every one of the swords pierced through space, causing countless holes in the space, which then automatically repaired on its own. This was a spectacular yet frightening scene. At this time, the shadow's enormous and tyrannical imposing aura erupted from his body and instantly spread a barrage of dead ki into the air. The spread-out dead ki then suddenly instantly condensed to form a spear and collided with the Demon Emperor's sword ki in the sky. Yi Shiwen, now is your chance. Hurry up and uncover the seal. At this time, Yi Mo's voice sounded in Yi Ziwen's mind. Yi Shiwen did not ask him why he was hiding in front of the Demon Emperor, because the answer was quite obvious. Boom! 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 The collision between dead ki and sword ki produced a horrible sight where a large section of space suddenly collapsed, just like the end of the world scenario. But right then, the Demon Emperor stretched his hand out and directly grabbed a world law out of the broken space. Afterward, he condensed that world law into a sword and struck with it, releasing a massive sword light, along with rippling world law, towards that shadow. Rumble! The entire space in the path of that sword light was cut off, and a large part of it collapsed like a shattered mirror, while at the same time, the sword light continued to travel towards the shadow. The shadow also congealed a spear out of dead ki in his hands and shot a beam of black light. Boom! The impact of this terrible collision seemed to be causing the annihilation of the world, as if the entire world would collapse any moment now. At this time, Yi Shiwen felt a terrifying surge of energy waves coming towards him. He immediately used Tianyuan Mirror to block those energy waves and rushed all the way inside the palace hall. He finally saw the ancient bell that was constantly ringing and releasing dreadful sound wave ripples. He also saw the seal that had completely sealed the bell's power. Yi Shiwen, do it now! Yi Mo suddenly shouted. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate to reach out and directly grab that seal, but he never thought that he would be able to tear off the seal so easily without putting much effort. Yi Shiwen snorted as he looked at the torn-off seal in his hands. He never imagined seeing such a pathetic seal that was able to restrain such a powerful ancient artifact. Not to mention he managed to tear it off as if it was nothing more than a piece of paper. Chua! The ancient clock bell turned into a streamer of light and flew towards the Demon Emperor. At this time, that arrogant shadow's barely noticeable face finally revealed a horrified expression. Ding dong! The bell's vigorous ringing sound echoed throughout the ominous mountain, and the sound waves overflowed everywhere. The shadow turned into a black streamer of light to escape, but the sound waves were quicker than him and instantly hit him from behind, annihilating him into dust in a flash. It seemed as if a formidable enemy like him simply did not stand a chance in front of the bell's power. The sound waves spread throughout the ominous mountain, and the entire undead army of zombies and skeletons instantly collapsed. The power of this bell was simply unimaginable. The seemingly endless undead army was instantly defeated, and countless corpses fell down on the ground. The demon emperor glanced at the demon beast cubs once, then heaved a sigh, but did not say anything. He just flew into the sky and slowly vanished into the horizon. The demon beast cubs were still crying as they saw the demon emperor disappear. Emperor Chun and the others looked at each other in dismay, as they had never seen demon beasts crying like this. The dark, ominous clouds in the sky suddenly broke after the heavy downpour that miraculously wiped out Deadkey and Inchi from the atmosphere, and the rainwater, which seemed to contain some kind of miraculous power, cleaned each and every bit of evil energy from the island. All kinds of vegetation began to grow up on the island, and a bleak island suddenly evolved into a fairyland in a matter of few breaths. Everyone knew that this might be the last thing that was left behind by the demon emperor in this world, but they were also deeply impressed by his power and skills, which were simply out of reach of the mortals. Demon Island battle finally came to a close with a loss of several human geniuses and thousands of demon beast soldiers. Out of more than 1,000 disciples summoned to this island, only 400 managed to survive till the end. This figure also included about 100 weak disciples who actually did not participate in the final battle. Now, the survivors clearly understood why this island was called Genius Meat Grinder. Although 1 year's time had not yet passed, the Demon Island quest came to an end ahead of time. Everyone was speculating that this might be the last summoning of geniuses to this island. After this term, the Demon Island Bell would no longer summon peerless geniuses from the 10 countries of Southeast region. After the undead rebellion was put down for good, the very next day, a crowd of human experts gathered at the coast. They were waiting for the ship that would take them from the Demon Island to the coast of East China Sea. Since the airspace of the Demon Island was isolated from the rest of the world, the safest option was to take the sea route. Both happiness and a sense of accomplishment could be seen on everyone's faces. They were somewhat tired after having finished the Demon Island quest. Of course, many experts were reluctant to leave. After all, staying on this island was very beneficial for their cultivation and experience. You're always welcome to be a guest of Wu Royal Clan. Wu Xiaochuan smiled and said to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. He was quite sad of separating from his two good friends, but being martial artists who were dedicated to the way of martial arts, they were accustomed to such scenes. Mu Ling nodded with a smile. At this time, there was a sudden commotion, and an ethereal voice sounded from afar and gradually approached the group of experts. Yi Shiwen saw a delicate figure with white skin, curved black eyebrows, and dazzling eyes, approaching him at an incredibly fast speed. It was as if he was looking at a fairy maiden with a peerless angelic appearance. Yi Shiwen was surprised when he realized that this figure was none other than Hua Menghan. She was clad in a snow-white robe, and her whole body was covered in a white aura. Also, a pair of white wings could be seen protruding out of her back. Not just Yi Shiwen. Everyone looked surprised when they saw Hua Menghan, because they had never seen her on the island in the past several months. It was as if she never set foot on the island or was possibly hiding somewhere. Hua Menghan gently descended next to Yi Shiwen, and her beautiful eyes smiled at him. "Are you okay?" Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat astonished tone. "Where were you all this time? I searched for you everywhere, but couldn't find you." "It's a long story," Hua Menghan said. Yi Shiwen sensed that she had obtained a peerless treasure and couldn't tell about it in front of everyone. Everyone around was casting envious glances at her. Judging from her speed and a pair of white wings on her back, they knew that she must have obtained some sort of treasure or heritage, and this out-of-the-world agility technique was an undeniable proof of that. Yi Shiwen noticed that she initially used to be at the first stage of Truth Realm at the time of Demon Island Bell Summons, but now she was already at Truth Ninth stage. It was obvious that she obtained some kind of inconceivable heritage during last several months. Where did Qinruochen go? Yi Shiwen had some doubts in his heart, but he chose not to ask right now. At this time, he saw someone approaching at a much faster speed than Hua Minghan. It was none other than the elderly tomb slave. He showed a faint smile to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, then waved his hand, and two divine lights directly submerged the minds of Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. Yi Shiwen immediately understood that the tomb slave fulfilled the promise to him and Mu Ling, but it seemed like others did not obtain tomb slave's heritage. Perhaps this promise was not for everyone. After the tomb slave handed over his heritage to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, he did not say anything and turn around to leave. Yi Shiwen was not in a mood to find out whether other experts got this heritage or not. And that was because a large ship was slowly approaching the island. To be continued, dash. Chapter 267. Chapter 267. Chu Jinkai promoted to Legendary Realm, NT. For those who don't remember, Chu Jinkai is one of the 5 pro-disciples of Yuan School, and also the eldest among them. Yuan School was not far away from the East China Sea coastline. Both Hua Minghan and Yi Shiwen displayed incredibly fast speed to reach Yuan School in much less time in comparison to the time it took them to reach the Demon Island. This time, they hardly spent half the time to travel from the East China Sea to Yuan School. Back then, Hua Minghan was on the verge of entering the second stage of Truth Realm, and now she was at Truth Ninth stage, which clearly showed the extraordinary heritage she obtained on the Demon Island. And Yi Shiwen was able to raise his cultivation level from Truth 4th stage to Truth 7th stage, though his battle efficiency was now comparable to Truth 9th peak. In other words, both of them reaped immense benefits on the Demon Island and would naturally display much faster speed than before. Hua Minghan was accompanied by a small white fox that was riding a beautiful rainbow and was occasionally producing faint roars. The wolf cub was on the side of Yi Shiwen and now seemed in a better mood than earlier. Initially, Yi Shiwen wanted to know the secret of the Demon Island, but after witnessing the battle on that ominous mountain and unexpected appearance of the Demon Emperor, Yi Shiwen decided to stop pursuing this secret. He did not want to get involved in some kind of terrible secret. As they say, ignorance is bliss. Such being the case, there was no reason for Yi Shiwen to continue to keep the wolf cub under arrest. So he told the wolf cub that he was free now and could go wherever he wanted to. However, in contrary to Yi Xiwen's expectation, the wolf cub chose to stay with him and said that he did not want to stay on the Demon Island. Otherwise, he would be suffocated to death. All of them were extremely fast and soon arrived at the entrance of Yuan School. They were about to enter when more than a dozen disciples suddenly arrived in front of them. These were the patrolling disciples of Yuan School. All of them were core disciples, with each having cultivation of Xiantian's 6th stage and above. They were riding tall cranes to fly this high in the sky. Core disciples are always in Xiantian realm, because after stepping into Truth Realm, they become true disciples. Since Xiantian level disciples cannot fly, they are riding cranes. Yi Shiwen also used to have a crane when he was in Xiantian realm. Since the invasion of by Ma Jiao, core disciples would always come out on patrolling duty. Stop! At this time, one of the core disciples said in a loud voice and blocked the path of Yi Shiwen and Hua Minghan. What do you want? Yi Shiwen put on a serious face and asked in a strict voice. True disciples enjoyed a special status in Yuan School, no less than the elders. Let alone Yi Shiwen was the 5th pro-disciple, then how did these core disciples dare to stop him? Even if these core disciples did not recognize them, they should have at least figured out that both Yi Shiwen and Hua Minghan were true disciples of Yuan School since they were flying in the sky and were wearing the sex badge as well. Then why did they dare to block their path like this? Hua Minghan did not say anything, but Yi Shiwen stepped forward to deal with them. Yi Shiwen, are they the disciples of your Yuan School? They are pathetic losers. Newborn pups on my island are better than these good-for-nothing weaklings. The wolf cub said, and seemed prepared to attack those disciples, but Yi Shiwen flicked his forehead with a finger to stop him. Do you know the consequences of stopping a true disciple? Yi Shiwen asked coldly. So, it is Brother Yi and Sister Hua. At this time, the leader of the core disciples recognized them, but still did not get out of their way. But I must inform you too that security rules have changed because Bai Mojiao's rebellion is getting bigger and bigger. Brother Chu has ordered a thorough inspection of anybody who comes from outside in order to guard against spies. So, you are basically trying to say that I might bring in spies with me, so you will perform an inspection? Yi Zaiwen's complexion turned dark and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. So basically, under this rule, even true disciples were not eligible to pass through the entrance without having an inspection done on them. But this rule shouldn't apply on pro-disciples since Chu Jinkai himself was a pro-disciple and did not hold enough authority to put checks on the other pro-disciples. However, it was still unprecedented and totally bizarre that a bunch of core disciples dared to question two true disciples, not to mention Yi Shiwen was also a pro-disciple. Chu Jinkai indeed held great authority in the sect, but this was totally unacceptable. Could it be that his plan was to offend true disciples? We are not trying to say that, but Brother Chu has set a rule, and we must abide by that. The leading disciple said, "Get lost!" Yi Shiwen was disinclined to speak nonsense with them. Performing inspection on him was no different than putting him in the category of a probable traitor. Would it not thoroughly degrade his dignity and prestige as a pro-disciple? And that too when he was going to be inspected by a bunch of core disciples? It was not just about being suspected or inspected by juniors. It was also about submitting to Chu Jinkai's authority, and Yi Shiwen wasn't the type of guy who would simply ignore that. Brother Yi, Sister Hua, I'm afraid you do not know that 3 months ago, Brother Chu has stepped into the legendary realm and is now going to become the head of Next Generation, though it has not been announced yet. Gone are the days of 5 pro-disciples. The disciple said in an arrogant tone, Brother Yi, it would be best for you to obediently get yourself inspected, otherwise if Brother Chu got to know about this, things would get pretty ugly for you. The disciple openly mocked Yi Shiwen, and it seemed like he belonged to the faction of Chu Jinkai, and that was why he was being so rampant in front of Yi Shiwen. Even if Chu Jinkai has entered the legendary realm, that doesn't mean you can disrespect me. You're superior. Yi Shiwen shouted. Remember that your brother Chu won't come to save you from my wrath. You have dared to disrespect your superior, and according to the rules of Yuan School, you shall be punished. Yi Shiwen slapped the disciple right in the face and sent him flying far away. His figure disappeared into the horizon, and it was hard to predict how far he would go, flying like this, before falling down on the ground. Yi Shiwen was very calm at this moment, and seemed to be indulged in deep thinking. Chu Jinkai stepped into the legendary realm, so the status of other pro-disciples was no longer valid in Yuan School. Yi Shiwen, how dare you treat us this way? How do you plan to explain yourself in front of Brother Chu? A disciple got angry and shouted loudly. Of course, he was scared and did not expect to see Yi Shiwen reacting in such a manner. Other true disciples had already submitted to Chu Jinkai because it was now clear that he was going to become the next head of Yuan School. No one wanted to be on his bad side, and the other pro-disciples also lost their special status, thereby returning to their previous identity of true disciples. Humph, I don't need to give him an explanation, and I don't give a damn about what he thinks about me. Yi Shiwen said coldly, as he was not at all scared of Chu Jinkai. Yi Shiwen, behave yourself. Do you want to be convicted as a traitor? A familiar voice sounded from afar, and Elder Jin Xian arrived at the scene. So, it's you? Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Elder Jin Xian without showing any trace of respect whatsoever. If Chu Jinkai had placed such a rule, was it also applicable on the elders? True disciples enjoyed lots of privileges in Yuan School and held much more authority than the elders. This was the reason why Luo Yifan used to be so rampant by relying on his identity as a true disciple. True disciples were superior to core disciples in status, strength, and influence. They also held enough authority to punish core disciples if deemed punishable. Not to forget, Yi Shiwen was a pro-disciple and certainly wasn't going to just stand and watch while his juniors tried to disrespect him. But Yi Shiwen soon understood that it was actually Jin Xian who was behind all this. Jin Xian must have instigated these core disciples to provoke Yi Shiwen and chose the right time to make an appearance and blame him. Yi Shiwen noticed that Jin Xian's cultivation was now at Truth 8th stage. Of course, Jin Xian must have been desperate and forcibly had a breakthrough at such an old age. Otherwise, later it would be impossible to have a breakthrough. So, he got an opportunity to have a forced breakthrough, and he made full use of it. Yi Shiwen did not know how he did it, but it was certainly related to Chu Jinkai. Yi Shiwen, are you trying to commit treason right after coming back to the sect? Jin Xian looked viciously at Yi Shiwen, and a look of anger flashed in his eyes. Yi Shiwen had made him lose face in front of everyone. He had been thrown into the mine, never to come back to the sect again in this lifetime, all because of this one arrogant brat named Yi Shiwen. He never thought that one day he would get an opportunity to return to Yi Yuan school and once again stand in front of Yi Shiwen. Treason, you say? These people have dared to disrespect their superiors. They are lucky that I haven't killed them already. Yi Shiwen said in a calm, yet scary voice. Nonsense. They are acting in accordance with the orders from above. But I can see that you are acting suspiciously, and you also are the biggest suspect of being a spy, Jin Xian said and grinned. An ignorant elder like you wants to convict me. I think you do not wish to live anymore. Yi Shiwen said and smirked in response. I see. In that case, first I will capture you, then deliver you to the Elder Parliament. Jin Xian sneered and suddenly rushed forward. The great power of Truth 8th stage instantly manifested itself within his body. He arrived in front of Yi Shiwen like an incredibly fast storm, but since he had once been defeated before, he knew that Yi Shiwen was ridiculously strong. Hence, Jin Xian would naturally not dare to underestimate him. Damn you bastard! Yi Shiwen was furious with an intense killing intention boiling within his heart. His whole body instantly released a burst of Zhen Yuan in the surroundings. A disciple wants to attack an elder? This is going to invoke capital punishment upon you. Jin Xian said in a stern voice, and all of a sudden, waves of Zhen Yuan surged out of his body and began to revolve around him. Yi Zaiwen's Zhen Yuan transformed into a coiling dragon which roared loudly and crashed into the revolving protection screen of Jin Xian. Yi Shiwen did not even need to act personally, because Jin Xian's revolving protection screen was immediately routed by the coiling dragon. At this time, Jin Xian shot his most powerful attack in the form of surging Zhen Yuan that blotted the sky and then suddenly converged towards Yi Shiwen, just a like squally shower. To be continued. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.